Good afternoon and welcome to the October 15, 2024 meeting of the Chatham Select Board. Please note this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify the chair. Seeing no such notification, I'll proceed. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29, 2023 signing of the Acts of 2023 extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, until March 31, 2025. This meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 203-386-491, #, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Chatham TV, Xfinity channel 1072, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. Before I establish a quorum and commence the meeting, I want to note that this week Chatham lost two members of its community. First was Steve Burlingame, who passed away this past Wednesday. Mr. Burlingame served for over a decade through his appointment to the HBDC from August 2014 through January 2016. As a member of the Planning Board from December 2015 through June 2016, and most recently as a member of the Historical Commission from June 2019 through his passing. I also want to note the passing, the very untimely passing over the weekend of Shannon Hubbard and her daughter. Shannon was a preschool teacher at Chatham Elementary School. If we could just observe a note of silence in memory and send our condolences to their families. Thank you. I'll now establish a quorum. Mr. Metters.
Present.
Mr. Dykens.
Present.
Ms. Davis.
Present.
Mr. Schell is present, and Mr. Nicastro.
Present.
We don't have any minutes today to look at, so we will start with public announcements and agenda requests. We also have a committee board commission update from the Cemetery Commission. We have a report, as is the case for every meeting, from the Director of Public Works, Mr. Faley, on our wells, et cetera, drinking water and so forth. Next, we will take up public comments on the business agenda. And then finally, the business agenda will consist of, I think that's 10 items, but we'll find out at the end here. First is consider acceptance of memorial bench donation at Seaside Links. Second is vote to approve and sign the state election warrants. Third is considering a one-day alcohol license for the Paint and Sip event to benefit the Sampson Fund and the Brewster Veterinary Hospital. Fourth is a report on the Cape Light Compact 3-year plan. Fifth is considering donation of road plates, which is continued from our September 24 meeting. Sixth is a second read of the town project's public engagement procedure, which we last took up on the 8th of October. Seventh is considering amending the town's budget and financial management policies to limit the town's ability of the town when borrowing money to exclude debt under Proposition 2.5, et cetera. Next is consider amending the meeting public participation policy. Next is considering select board officer roles on committees, boards and commissions. And finally, we're going to talk about how we proceed with committees, boards, and commissions annual review. So with that, I will start with an announcement that from October 20 to 26, 2024 is National Friends of the Library Week. This week coincides with the 45th anniversary of the Friends of the Eldridge Public Library and their continued support of the Eldridge Public Library, and we thank them profusely for their dedication and work to support the library. I will next ask for public announcements and agenda requests from the board. Any from the board? Mr. Nicastro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two. They both relate to housing. The first is with respect to number 127 Old Harbor Road. A couple of years ago, and maybe if this occurred twice, town staff, including the building inspector and the health agent, toured the property, toured the structures. I don't know if they ever prepared a written report, but I don't believe that the select board ever received anything on it. So I'd like to have a presentation as an agenda item by the building inspector to report on what they found in regards to the conditions of the buildings. For example, the foundation, the wooden frame, the plumbing and heating and electrical systems, and so forth. The second relates to Stepping Stones Road. We had some test fits that were done, and we had a presentation at the board, and then they were re-presented to us following some revision. That was some time ago. I'd like to have as an agenda item that these be presented back to us for discussion and review. Both of these items with respect to and for the purpose of advancing the development of these properties with an RFP, and obviously the sooner the better. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. For the record, I don't recall specifically, but I do believe that those test fits were presented to us in our capacity as the Affordable Housing Trust Board. So with that, I'll recognize anybody from the audience that would like to make an announcement, or Mr. Bergstrom. Thank you. Ron, sorry.
Good evening, Ron Bergstrom. I'm here as chair of the Barnstable County Commissioners to respectfully request a spot on the next agenda to discuss the implications of ballot question number 6. Ballot question number 6 only affects Barnstable County. It has to do with the division of authority between the Assembly and the Commissioners. The Assembly has sponsored the ballot question, and the Commissioners have released a statement unanimously opposing it and giving our reasons. So I think this needs a little bit more attention, and I understand you might want to invite your Assembly delegate, Randy Potash, or someone else to speak, but and make sure you limit our time, otherwise it'll get completely out of hand. So anyway, that's my request, and hopefully you can honor it, and let me know.
Thank you, and I'll just note that I think our next meeting is the last meeting that would be available before the election. Is that not correct?
No, so the next meeting is the 22nd, which is our budget summit, and then the 29th.
29th, okay. So, and thanks for the suggestion. I actually had a conversation with Randy and was contemplating also speaking to you, so
Yeah.
for sure we'll make it to 29th.
And I can send you some materials so you're aware of what's going on when you walk in the door.
So we'll have something in the packet
Yeah.
to support the conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else? Okay.
Mr. Chair, we do have
yes.
someone online, Stephen Buckley.
Forgive me. Mr. Buckley.
Yes, thank you very much, Steve Buckley. I want to re-request, I guess, an item that's already on the, that I had requested in the past, and it's listed in the next to last page of your packet of previously requested items, and that has to do with the public engagement policy. I'm gratified to see that that's on the agenda tonight, but I also had requested that there be some type of task group or advisory group so that, yes, any type of public engagement policy might actually involve members of the public. So I'm re-requesting that there be something in addition to the good work of the town manager and Shauna as communications manager, that that there be something that whatever is adopted, that there be some way that others outside, that the public can be that. So I'm reiterating something I had already asked before, but that's been missing in the process so far. Thank you.
So, Mr. Buckley, just to clarify, the item on this evening's agenda that you're referring to is F, Town Projects Public Engagement Procedure, is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but it's missed. But the other part was, can we talk about sometime in the future about how the public might actually be involved in improving it, because it apparently has not been involved in drafting it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else? Anybody else online? Okay. We will go then to item 2, which is a report and comments from the members of the Cemetery Commission. Welcome. Gentlemen.
Thank you and good evening. My name is David Whitcomb. I'm chairman of the Cemetery Commission, and standing at the podium with me is Bill Bystrom and Peter Gaines, also commission members. I thought Quinn Fulst might be here, but maybe later. So in your packet, there's a brief information on Chatham cemeteries that was compiled by Dee Schipelhout before she left as our administrative assistant. And I found it kind of interesting, so I just threw that in there for you, for your own knowledge. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak with you tonight. Over the past 3 years, we have been a commission in transition. After serving under the Park and Recreation Department with Dan Tobin as our staff liaison, we were transferred to the Department of Public Works, where we have had 3 different directors to the department, as well as we've been in 4 different offices over the last 3 years, and we lost our long-time chairman, George Goodspeed. During that time, we were also unable to fill the part-time administrator secretary position for the better part of 1 year, and 2 of the 3 maintenance positions that were to be shared with Park and Grounds. We did, however, welcome Bill and Peter to the commission. I'd like to turn this over to Bill now to talk about some of the personnel challenges we have had.
Hi, I'm Bill Bystrom. And first of all, on a personal note, I really would like to thank the selectmen for the countless hours you put in making Chatham the great place it is. I know you spent a tremendous amount of time. You know, this year was Judy Patterson, and she's a resident of Chatham. She wrote a letter to the Chronicle earlier in the year. And in that letter, she said that Union Cemetery and Seaside Cemetery were in sorry condition. And although we tend to be on opposite ends of the political spectrum, in this one particular case, I think Judy was spot on. They both were in pretty sad condition. So sad that on Valentine's Day, my wife, Tilda, and I spent 4 hours picking up trash at Seaside Cemetery so that when people came to visit, they would not be offended by that. So sad that Memorial Day weekend, I took my weed whacker and went down and weed whacked between the street and where the cemetery was, so it looked decent. David has spent countless hours going through the cemetery on his own time. He has removed rotted fence posts from the Old North Cemetery. He has replaced fencing in the Old South Cemetery. David and I have both worked at the South Chatham Cemetery, fixing and replacing fencing. Peter has done a great job, along with his wife, gaining information for us from many hours of work, going through recording who's buried here, where, and everywhere. Because as you probably know, Chatham has 15 cemeteries. Originally, they were managed by churches. Some of the information came to the town, some of it didn't. There was a fire at Town Hall a long time ago. Some of the information got burned for a long time because there was no central locus for the cemetery department in Chatham. Information was carried from place to place in shoeboxes, some of which we've managed to replicate and some of we haven't. So still, if we have questions on some of the old cemeteries, we have to actually go and probe who is actually in that lot. So anyway, the bottom line is that there's been a lot of work that needs to be done in the cemeteries. There has been a lot of work that has been done in the cemeteries. But I think basically the problem the Cemetery Commission is facing, along with the DPW and maybe the Board of Selectmen, is what we found in the old Paul Newman movie, HUD, I think it was, a failure to communicate. And basically what that means is that since 2021, when I was on the board, we've had 4 different people, either department heads of the DPW or acting department heads of the DPW. So it's not surprising that all the information on what we thought should be done and what actually does get done never got transferred. So I spent the weekend and I went through the minutes that we had since 2021. And I just beg your indulgence for about 3 minutes, and I'll make this real quick. And Dean, I could have used your help on this, and I'll tell you why. Because a lot of these minutes, as I read over them, the grammar is atrocious. We missed a few things here and there. So if we had you on our board, you would have picked those up, because you do that every week here. And Mike, I was going to say, the 2 lawyers, so if either one of you want to just resign from there and come down to here anytime, feel free. Okay. So this is the minutes from the minutes of October 28, 2021, when, as a board, we realized that we had problems maintaining the cemeteries, serious problems. So these were the recommendations that the board took from the October 28, 2021 meeting, and it was submitted to the town manager. Number 1, have the town take over the maintenance of the cemeteries using town-hired staff and use those personnel to perform snow maintenance and other work for the town during the winter. 2, the town purchase the equipment needed to maintain the cemeteries with the town staff. And 3, bid out cemetery maintenance for the first half of 2022 with the anticipation that the work being performed by the town would start in July 1, 2022. These recommendations were submitted along with by Dan Tobin, who was our liaison, to the town manager, and the town manager, in her wisdom, incorporated those in the budget for the upcoming 2023 year. At that point, to quote the minutes from February 10th, 2022, after the budget had been submitted, again, this is from the budget and staffing report from the Cemetery Commission. David Whitcomb, chairman, stated the cemetery department will now work under the DPW. the DPW is proposing 3 full-time positions to mow and care for the cemetery grounds. This increase in staff and equipment would certainly better serve and certainly improve the appearance of the cemeteries. Okay, you fast forward to the minutes of June 30th, 2022. By this point, this budget that included the 3 additional, or the 3 people earmarked for the cemetery, had been voted on and approved at the town meeting. So it was in effect. And on that date, June 30th, Tom Temple, who at that point was the acting director, or was the director, reassured the commissioners that the cemetery department has enough money to maintain the cemetery grounds to the end of the fiscal year. He also expressed, once the DPW has all 3 people on board, they will be responsible for mowing, trimming, and extensive maintenance both outside and inside the cemeteries. So here you go. There's the evidence is there. It went to town meeting, it passed, it was in the budget, and then we just never got it. So I'm going to go to one other item, and you can find this. This is the worksheet. And again, I'll make copies of this if anybody would like one. I'm sorry I don't have copies here for you tonight. The Town of Chatham fiscal year salary worksheet, July 1, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. It shows 3 people on the cemetery department, and they were to work half-time for the cemetery and the other half for the buildings and grounds, or whatever other DPW department they wanted. And you can see that the budget increased $65,000 from the year before to cover that. So that the money was there, and in the next year, the town went out, the town actually purchased some of the equipment we needed to have the staff work in the cemeteries. But it really hasn't happened. It's happened in some of the cemeteries, but not the big cemeteries that we need, Seaside and Union. We've had to still contract out maintenance in Seaside and Union. The problem with that is last year's RFP went out. We got 1 reply. That 1 person that replied, we had to give the contract to. But that contractor can't even mow the entire cemetery in 1 day. So it's always going to have part of it that looks shabby. It's like in your own home. If you mow the backyard 1 day, and then you wait 4 days and mow the front yard, and then you wait another couple days and mow the side yard, it's going to look unkempt. I don't think, and none of us think as a board, that is suitable for Chatham. We don't think it's respectful of the people that are in the cemeteries, okay? And we're very concerned about that, because not only are we big supporters of cemeteries, but also, if you ever remember that advertisement that was on TV, there was an advertisement, it was a gentleman would get on, he had a full head of hair, and he said, I'm not only the president of the Hair Club for Men, I'm also a client. We're not only cemetery commissioners, but we're also clients at some point of the cemetery, hopefully not too soon, okay? Maybe, hopefully 20 years out. But in the meantime, we'd like to ensure that everything is good. Thank you very much. David?
Okay, I think it goes without saying that we've had some personnel challenges over the past time. That being said, we have adequately maintained our 4 active and 11 inactive cemeteries for the most part, except for the early spring mowing season. With select board and community support, we started our cemetery restoration program. We began by trimming and removing overgrown trees and bushes in Seaside Cemetery. With the support of the Community Preservation Committee, the commission received town meeting approval to restore 109 gravestones in Section A in the older section of Seaside. We have begun the same process in Section A of Union Cemetery and intend to submit another application to the CPC in the next 2 weeks. We have also cleaned most of the monuments in Section B of Union Cemetery. Quinn Foreman was hired as a full-time administrative assistant a year ago and has been working on digitizing the cemetery records as well as the day-to-day business and updating our website. I'll cross that out because Quinn is not here. In moving forward, the commissioners continue to believe it is more efficient and cost-effective to have town staff maintain and improve our cemeteries. We believe there should be 3 full-time town employees, including one as a foreman, dedicated primarily to the cemeteries in order to sustain a high level of municipal service. As I'm sure most of you know, the Department of Public Works is our largest department. It includes the following divisions under the townwide organizational chart: highway, principal projects and operations, parks and recreation, transfer station, GIS, custodial, water and sewer, facilities, and cemetery. I'm afraid, as good a job as they are doing under Rob Faley, the cemetery sometimes falls between the cracks. I'd like to talk about funding for a minute. Excluding the capital articles that roll over each year until spent, the average cemetery budget for fiscal year 2022, 23, and 24 was $101,690. This is offset by turnbacks that go back to free cash of $26,570 and lot sales in the perpetual care totaling another $31,670. This leaves a balance of $43,450 per year to maintain our cemeteries. We also have in our coffers $540,000 in perpetual care funds. We have been told only a small percentage of that can be used annually. We would like to ask the Select Board tonight to look into that. It makes no sense to have that much money sitting in a bank when we have the perpetual care of our cemeteries is needed now. As you know, under general law, we are charged under your supervision and control to maintain the public cemeteries in our town, and with your approval, appoint such employees as are necessary to maintain our cemeteries. I hope we have done that tonight, and we would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Dave, I think
Oh,
you
excuse
have-
me.
So
I'm sorry.
Quinn Foreman, our department coordinator for cemetery, he's participating virtually.
Oh,
He's right there on
Oh.
the screen.
hi, Quinn.
Hi. Hey, David, sorry about that.
That's okay.
I came right at 3 and wanted to keep the decorum of the meeting, so I didn't interrupt. And Bill, those copies of the packet are actually right on that bench outside the door. I'm so sorry.
Okay, so Quinn, while you're on, you want to maybe explain what you've been doing since you were hired and what you might see in the future?
Of course. So hi, everyone. My name's Quinn Foreman. I'm currently the cemetery administrator for the town of Chatham. Been working here for about a year now. Currently, I'm working on some really great projects. I think the biggest one is creating a online public-facing database for the cemetery's records. Right now, it's really coming along. I think there's one final push that we're going to need, and that's going to come through, getting either a contractor or a volunteer group to go and crowdsource lot burials and just correlate, which lot has which people buried there. I'm sorry, I'm not the best at the public speaking.
Okay, then thank you, Quinn. And Mr. Chairman, I think Commissioner Gaines wanted to say something before you.
Thanks very much. Peter Gaines. You may remember in June of 2023, when I interviewed before this board, the Select Board, for a position on the Cemetery Commission, you asked me a lot of questions why I wanted to be on the Cemetery Commission. And I said, among them was, it was very personal for me, as our home overlooked the new section of Seaside Cemetery. In 2019, my wife and I purchased plots in the new section, and as fate would have it, 2 years later, we bought a house literally overlooking our plot. And but in the years that we've lived in that home, in the 3 years we've lived in that home, what we've witnessed is that, as Mr. Bystrom and Mr. Whitcomb have already said, is that the maintenance of the cemetery has, at least some Seaside, has been sporadic. As Mr. Bystrom said, there were times when we would see the mowers there, and they would be doing their job, and then they would stop and literally leave half of the cemetery or part of the cemetery completely undone. And it got to the point where it just looked terrible. Imagine your home and your next door neighbor doesn't maintain their property. Well, we think of Seaside Cemetery as our next door neighbor. And in addition, there are times that we've gone into the cemetery, picked up some trash, not that often. I don't expect the DPW to go in there every single day. But we take the maintenance of Seaside Cemetery and all the cemeteries in town very, very seriously. So I just wanted to echo what Mr. Bystrom and Mr. Whitcomb said, that if the means are available, we take it personally when a citizen of the town comes before our commission, as they did twice this past spring and summer, expressing really a lot of concern that they had gone to. I think one was right around Memorial Day, that they had gone to, or just before Memorial Day, that they had gone to visit a relative's plot, and it was overgrown, and how disappointed they were, especially pointing out the fact that when their relatives purchased their plot, perpetual maintenance was included in the cost. So it's hard to respond to situations like that, and we hope that the Select Board takes this up and treats it with, we think, the necessary, well, it's serious. It really is. Thanks for their time.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Questions from the board? Jeff?
Yeah, I really want to thank this trio, dedicated trio, that has done some work themselves in the cemeteries, and they really have a vision for the cemeteries as well. And it's really, we need to support this commission, and we need to improve our cemeteries and take care of them. We have the money. This town can afford to take care of these cemeteries, so we just need to execute. We need to hire folks to get in there. That's the recommendation from our commissioners, that we hire folks so that we have control and we can hold folks accountable. Subcontracting did not work. You can hear the frustration with the subcontracting model. So I think it's on us to hire the folks that are requisite to maintaining our cemeteries in the way they ought to be maintained. We should be proud of our cemeteries. I know David's been in there with chainsaws, cutting stuff down and discovering graves and stuff. It's not appropriate. So we need to do a better job. We need to do a better job. We've earmarked the money. Now we have to execute. We have to hire folks and support DBW and support these guys and support our folks that are buried there and the families that are thinking about being buried there. Seaside, Union, Peoples, South Chatham are the 4 active ones, I believe, and they ought to be tip-top. And then the inactive ones are of extreme interest historically, and they're beautiful, and they're of a major historical interest. So we need to take care of those as well. So there's been some frustration here, and you're hearing that tonight, and it's up to us to execute. And I do also recommend and ask that we figure out what's going on with the perpetual fund. $540,000 sitting in a fund ought ought to throw off at least, 5, 10% to support the operations and the improved operations of our cemeteries. So I'll get off my high horse. I am the liaison. I feel as though I haven't done a good job representing these guys, but now's the time, or the town, but now's the time to do that. Thanks.
Thank you. Dean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My thanks to the three of you for your presentation. I very much enjoyed reading the historical narrative of the cemeteries. I didn't know a lot of that information, and I commend the public to read it. The material is on our website with the agenda. I just had a couple of questions. What type of equipment do you think is needed? Because that's one of you're basically talking personnel and equipment here. I was just wondering what type of equipment do we lack?
Well, a couple of years ago, there was $168,000 in our capital budget to be shared with the Park and Grounds. I believe we bought a pickup truck that is also can be used as a plow, and we bought a mower. I think the cemeteries are a different animal than a lot of the places that we mow in town, and I think there may be some special equipment to deal with them and make them better. I don't know what they are at the moment, but I would hope that we can get someone within a foreman, someone that really can assess that situation and implement that.
I would think it's a little harder to mow a cemetery because you're going in between graves.
May I just add
Yes.
one thing? A stump grinder. A stump grinder you definitely need, because as you take out some of the growth, you need to get down and get the roots out so that you have a good base. But there was a whole list that we had available 2 years ago with the equipment, and some of it was purchased.
Okay.
Can I just add
yeah.
to that before Mr. Feely gets too mad at us? We did buy, or the town bought a dingo recently, and with that dingo comes a stump grinding attachment. I'm not sure if we have that yet or it's operational, not yet, but at least that's in the works. But that's a very important piece of equipment that we need.
I want to just address the perpetual care fund, because I think Jeff makes a good point. You said that, 5% is tapped?
I believe it's 5%, yes.
Yeah. Do you know have you had occasion to look at what other communities are doing on perpetual care?
I haven't. I had several conversations with our former finance director, Alex Alela, and she didn't seem to think that was possible. It might be a part of in the state statutes or something. They talk about perpetual care.
I don't know the answer.
I know you can't use it for monument restoration and things like that. That's why we have to go to the CPC to get that, but you can use it for all the other maintenance things that happen in the cemetery.
Yeah, it's worth exploring. That's a good chunk of money, and maybe we can tap into it at a higher rate. When people purchase graves, purchase plots, they're paying, as you pointed out, a portion of that is perpetual care, and that's paid with the expectation that the town is going to take care of the grounds. I don't want to spend. You gave a very exhaustive presentation, and it's worth this board's consideration along with the town manager. Since we're approaching Veterans Day, can I just ask a side question? What's happening with flags? I think that has improved, that situation over the last several months, but are we ready for Veterans Day? And who does that? The Scouts? Volunteers, or both?
You guys want to?
Well, with Veterans Day, you want to?
If Quinn is still here, he could probably answer it. I know that for several years, my wife and I, at least in Seaside and at Union, put out the flags ourselves before Memorial Day and Veterans Day. And then, was it this past Memorial Day? I think the Coast Guard volunteered. I don't know. Mr. Quinn Foreman, who's still on, may know the answer in terms of who are going to volunteer for Veterans Day.
I can just add, before Quinn, you say that the Coast Guard has helped put out flags for the last, since I can remember, under the direction of Mike Ryder, who is our cemetery coordinator with the
Yeah, so it's the Coast Guard, the Boy Scouts also have helped out.
And volunteers.
And volunteers. The big issue we've had with flags is not so much putting them out, but taking them back.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to leave them out all year. If you leave them out all year, what you have is they disintegrate. Unfortunately, the flags are provided to the town, and when I say unfortunately, the ones that they've purchased, I believe, were made in China. They're not the best quality, so we really have to take them out and replace them twice a year. There are some people that have requested that they have flags remain on their graves all year, and you can do that. And we're happy to do that, and what we suggest to those people is we have to somehow, by we, I mean the cemetery commission, we've talked about this before, we have to indicate on the individual markers which flags remain out all year, so they just don't get taken up as they go. But those people, we're asking them to file a request to keep their flags up all year. We're looking at something that is good looking, or to go on the bronze marker. And then, once we do that, what we'd like to do is, we've also told them that feel free to come back and get a new flag from the town whenever that flag is in bad disrepair. So it keeps the respect thing going. It doesn't, we don't want to see flags that are ripped, torn, or scattered around somewhere. That does not show respect and does not look good.
Who provides the flags? The Department of Veterans Affairs?
Yeah.
Yes.
VFW.
Okay.
Whatever.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah.
And what's the protocol for how long you allow them to stay up, apart from the people that want it all year? And when do you take them down?
Usually it lasts a week after.
A week or two before and a
Yeah.
week or two after.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that came up at one of our commission meetings, a couple of months ago. And I think at the time, while some people requested to leave them up year-round, I believe what we decided as a policy was to put the flags up, again, a week or 10 days, 2 weeks before Memorial Day, before Veterans Day, and leave them up for 2 weeks.
Okay. Well, thank you. I just wanted to make sure there was a plan for upcoming Veterans Day. Thank you.
I just have a quick question, but I want to thank you for your dedication and commitment to the cemeteries. Just to follow up on Dean, how do you find out if somebody is a veteran? Is it, I mean, how's that designation?
Well, in the records, most of the records, it has the deceased, whether they are a veteran or not.
Okay.
And currently now, when someone is buried, it's part of the form that we have them fill out saying whether they are a veteran or not. And so we place a medallion wherever those are, and that's what so the flags keep going in, or go in and come out, but the medallions stay there year round.
Well, David, excuse me, but on many stones, when my wife and I did a survey of all of the, every single plot in the Seaside, part of the data that we were collecting, not only who owned the plot, who was buried there, their dates of birth, dates of death, but on many stones, not all, but on many stones, it does have whether or not they were a veteran. It goes back actually to the 1800s. So I assume that when people are veterans and they choose their stone, they have that etched into the stone.
Another question is, what are the fees for lots and plots and things? And have they stayed the same over the course of the last few years?
If anyone feels that they have a relative that's buried who isn't recognized as a veteran, if they let us know, we're trying to catch up on that, so we appreciate that. The fee for the plot, it's the only affordable housing in Chatham, and it's in perpetuity. It's a good deal. It's $800 for a plot.
And how long has it been $800?
Excuse me?
How long has that
We
fee been?
did change the fee, I think, 3 years ago.
And it's upon your recommendation that that fee gets changed, or do you work with us or the
We
budget?
haven't, that hasn't come up yet, but we periodically look at other towns, and I think we are low. But we haven't discussed whether to raise that or not.
Okay. Thank you.
Corey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I just want to thank you for a very thorough update from the Cemetery Commission. We all recognize the Cemetery Commission has taken some heat over the last couple of years and some criticism, but Bill nailed it right in the head. But the nail right in the head is communication. Collectively, we communicate better. That solves 99% of the issues. We have the means, hopefully financially, town meeting actions. We'll work with the town manager, budget, staffing. But collectively, we can execute what the intention is of the charge of the Cemetery Commission and frankly, the desire of the public. So I thank you for your service, and I hope we can move forward in a productive manner.
So I'd just like to say one thing about staffing. I mean, we hear it over and over again that nobody's applying for the jobs. So that's why we can't fill them. Well, that isn't good enough anymore. We've really got to do something, whether it's raise the salaries or benefits or something. Just saying, we're the same as other towns and every town is in the same boat isn't working. So if we can't get those employees, then we're going to have to go back to contracted labor a real contracted labor that's going to do a year-round job in the cemeteries, and it will cost a lot more money, I believe. So I'll end with that.
So I don't want to unduly extend this conversation. Thanks very much to all of you. Clearly very dedicated, rigorous, and careful attention, service. You obviously work well together, and that's terrific to see as well. Thank you very much for all of that. It sounds to me as if 2 years ago we sort of had both a consensus, a governmental consensus, and a budgetary commitment that at least on paper was adequate to the task. It also sounds to me as if somewhere along the line, whether it was failure to communicate or otherwise, things kind of fell between the cracks a little bit. Part of it perhaps is the difficulty of hiring, but I want to endorse what your select board liaison has said. We've got to do better. You've put it on us. We accept that. I accept that on behalf, or for personally as a member, and I think everybody here does. I understand there's a little bit of desire to be collaborative with the staff and others in the process, but I think for us to execute on our commitment, we have to ask you to stay in touch with us and let us know if it's happening. And you can work with Rob and the other staff and understand their issues. But to the extent they have an obstacle or whatever, if we don't hear about it, we can't do anything about it. It's a good time for this to be in front of us. We're just about to start with the budget. Obviously, this will have a much higher profile in our budget discussions than it might otherwise have had. So thanks for that as well. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a nice
Thanks for
evening.
your time.
Next item is Mr. Faley, who's going to tell us about the wells and drinking water and so on and so forth. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Select Board. Rob Faley, Director of Public Works. So yes, I will do, sorry, this is sliding on me. Just going to give you the September update for the water report. Training field wells, temporary well 5, still online. We were planning on closing it sometime this week, but since well 6 is being redeveloped, we're going to keep it online a couple of weeks longer before we do the winter shutdown. Once we do the winter shutdown on that, the contractor for the PFAS treatment plant will take over that. They'll refurbish that vessel, that GAC vessel, and reuse that in the new building. For the building itself, the slab, the foundation has been poured. You can see there's a picture here of just before it was poured. Contractor is right on schedule. They're doing a great job. Wells 10 and 11, we're still, well, 11 still online, doing well. And well 10, we're getting closer to having some type of review from the Office of Environmental Affairs. They claim just a couple of weeks now, and they'll at least have a review of the document, so we'll know where we stand with that. For the month of September, the wells have been running 10 to 15 hours a day. The water storage tanks hit low-level alarms 6 times this month. They're still occurring Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. But the low level in the alarm in the tank is not as extreme as it has been before well 11 came online. So we are seeing gradual improvements. Would be nice when well 10 gets online as well. It'll help us out quite a bit. Same thing, water sampling, station maintenance is ongoing. It's pretty similar month to month. System maintenance, we're starting the hydrant painting. Veolia employees continue to inspect the customer residences in response to the lead and copper database. So today I submitted the water service line inventory to DEP. We have almost 7,000 customers. We still have approximately 1,600 where material is unknown, where we don't know. We can't identify the pipe going into the foundation of the house. It doesn't mean that it's bad. We just don't have any way to confirm that. So that's what we'll be working on. Letters will be going out to all 1,600 residents by November 15th to try to get access to their basements so we can do an inspection. We have, I believe, 3 years to confirm that data. And then we have to come up with a game plan on if any of them are lead or unlined galvanized pipe, we have to come up with a game plan to replace those lines. So far, we have not come across any lead lines yet out of the 5,600 that we have confirmed data on. So that's a good sign. And of course, you had the hydraulic analysis report by Weston and Sampson last month. So here's the September 2023 versus September 2024. We're about 5 million gallons more than we pumped this time last year. A couple of days really jump out at you. I've tracked Sundays seem to be a much higher use day than any other day, and I'm not sure what the correlation is, but I think we talked about that last month as well. It's not a flip day. It's just kind of an arbitrary thing. I'm not sure what's happening, and most of the irrigation's on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So just an anomaly that we'll continue to track. And here it is in the graph. In the top part, you can see we had that heavy rain September 19th, 20th, and 21st, and you can really see how the usage dipped on those 3 days, whether it's foul weather or whether it's the irrigation systems are not running. We did pump very little water on those 3 days. And here's the comparison of the monthly report for all the wells. You could see well 4 was offline for maintenance through the latter part of the month. And then well 6, where I talked about it's under redevelopment, so that's offline currently. We hope to have that back up and running in another week or two. It's a good time of year to get our maintenance plans completed. And again, here is our pumping graph, just to show the level of effort for each well, and then the year-to-date pumping below that. 2024 compared to 2023, we're about 8.5 million gallons less year-to-date, but we've pumped 397 million gallons already this year. And here's just a year-to-date in a graph form. As far as our USGS wells, observation wells, Chatham is on top. You really can see that spike where we were on the seasonal decline, and then that 8 or so inches of rain that we had 3 weeks ago put a dramatic halt to the seasonal decline. Whether it continues to climb or whether it's just at least stopped the decline, which is it's a really good sign. We've had some more wet weather, so I expect it to continue to improve. And then down below where it shows Brewster, which is more of the bellwether for water in the area, it still had a sharp increase, although not as drastic as Chatham's, and I think Chatham probably received the brunt of that rain for the Cape than any other town. And finally is the 5-year comparison. The month of September, we pumped almost 61 million gallons. That's the highest for any September since 2020. And our pumping hours actually matched 2020 exactly. First half of September was very dry, so I think we're seeing some of that curse coming off and getting a little bit of relief towards the second half of the month. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Corey?
First, thank you, Rob, for the presentation. Just going back to the September 23-24 comparison, I mean, I know we can't pinpoint exactly what happened certain days, irrigation's up, dry weather, whatever, but on September 15th, we had a 103% jump increase, which is really jumping out at me. Any thoughts on what happened or what event?
So the 15th this year was on a Sunday. It's another one of those anomalies. Last year it was on a Friday. Whether last year, but typically Fridays are when irrigation systems are still running, so that's usually a heavier use day. So again, it's just points of interest. I'm tracking them, but I don't have a good excuse or explanation.
All right, fair enough, thank you.
Anybody else? Oh, Jeff?
I just think it's a great report. Really enjoyed seeing it. I don't know what the next steps are on identifying additional water supply sources. I'm not going to put anybody on the spot tonight, but just it's always in the back of my mind. What are the next steps? That's all.
And I believe we'll discuss that at the next Water and Sewer Advisory meeting.
Super, thanks. Yep.
Anybody else? Thank you very much. Great
Okay.
report.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it. Okay. Next, we invite public comments on the business agenda. I'll start with the folks here in the room. Anybody have comments on the business agenda? Yes, sir. Mr. Holgren.
John Hogan, South Chatham. I was just wondering if you're going to have public comment on the item H, I believe, with Corey's members.
We had not so notified that, but if that's something that is desired, I don't.
It was simply that, whether now or later, I just was,
I'll tell you what, let's make it later,
thank you.
okay? Anybody else? Ms. Gibbs?
Thank you, Elaine Gibbs. I have 3 items. Number 1 is the road plates that have been continued. I noticed on here that the language now says the term hereby agrees to release and hold the donor harmless for any and all claims, suits, damages, liability of any kind, breach of contract, tort, negligence. Donor will not be liable for any indirect, special, consequential, or punitive damages arising out of or relating to this agreement or transactions contemplated, breach of contract, negligence, or otherwise. At the last meeting, when questioned, Greg Berman had said that we don't know about the structural condition of the underlying causeway where those road plates were put, that they had not been evaluated. Hundreds of thousands of pounds of boulders and 18-wheelers cross that causeway, and we don't know, since it hasn't been evaluated, what long-term impact or potential homeowner liability could be in the future. In this update, it said, despite attempts by town staff, the trustee and legal counsel of 97 Philippi have declined to make further revisions. They maintain the agreement as clear as written. It seems to me that attitude, that they refuse to discuss any negotiations at all, is inappropriate. I think there are two options. We either accept the plates as a donation, like we accepted the tree replacement with no agreement, as we did with the trees, or we reject the gift outright. I think this is an absolutely terrible precedent. The town should not be giving up any potential rights for financial remedy down the road that should occur. That's what property owners have liability insurance for. We made a lot of accommodations. Granted, they were for us because we didn't want, dredgers out there. But at the same time, this is a private venture, and I don't think we should be releasing the town from any potential action against a private property owner. Again, they have liability insurance for a reason. So that's number E. H, consider amending the meeting on public policy. I think it's ironic.
Ms. Gibbs, we've agreed to allow the public to comment alongside of the board on that item.
All right. See, that's part of the problem, to not tell us ahead of time, because everybody goes through a lot of preparation work to anticipate it. So I will hold those comments. Consider the select board officer roles. I think that in that discussion, in terms of having a chairman of the affordable housing and the select board should be reconsidered. I think that it's an awful lot of power for one individual. The state actually recommends that only one select board member be on it, and that a second one actually be the planning board when it is determined who is going to make up that group. And I think that should be considered. I think there are two different missions from the affordable housing chair and for the select board. They determine the agendas, how long people can speak, et cetera. And so I would hope that that's taken into consideration when you look at that. And I also concur that we should not be using Proposition 2.5 and excluding and calling special town meetings when a town meeting has spoken. So I would hope that is used judiciously and only when absolutely necessary. And I will hold my comments on public participation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Buckley?
Yes, Steve Buckley. I wanted to comment on item F, town projects public engagement procedure, but I'm wondering if it would be better if I would be allowed to comment at that time as well, rather than now.
If you have your comments and you're prepared, I suggest you go ahead and do it now.
Well, I could go on and on. There, as you may know, as some may remember, I brought a policy to town meeting in 2014, and if you go under the select board webpage, you'll see public participation, and one of those at the top is an article that was passed, resolution on public participation back in 2014. So I'm very, as I indicated previously, I'm very gratified that finally there's something as far as implementing the policy in regards to the procedure that's being proposed under item F that it's finally coming to fruition. On the other hand, I just learned about it over the weekend since I didn't watch the meeting last week, which was when it was first proposed to you all. And so I have all kinds of comments, but I think it's better to just let this go into effect as it's been revised and use trial and error, and to revisit it perhaps in a year to see what's working and what's not working. And coincidentally, I know because there's, I think last week, Shauna was presenting it to you and mentioned that the International Association for Public Participation is the gold standard for public participation / engagement. They're essentially the same. Engagement, participation is essentially the same, means the same thing. So I've been attending federal meetings on behalf of the International Association for Public Participation, and I just wanted to let you know that the federal government's going through the same thing right now. They're trying to come up with some federal framework for how all federal agencies should have some kind of standard approach so that you don't have BOEM, for instance, last week, doing public engagement their way, and then the EPA doing it another way, and then USDOT and MassDOT doing it another way. So I just thought I'd let you know that everything's in flux in the field of public engagement. So I just thought I'd let you know that a lot could change over the next year, and that's why I would suggest that it be revisited in a year after some use there. But I can throw out a bunch of websites, but I'll hold that back. I would say if somebody wants to know more about what's going on at the federal level, they could Google public engagement federal framework. And that's public engagement federal framework. And if anyone has any questions, people out there who are listening to this want to contact me personally, I'd be glad to give them a briefing. But that's about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley. Okay, anything else from the public, either online or here in the room? It appears not. So we'll move to item B, which is voting to approve and sign the state presidential election warrant. Oh, sorry. The acceptance of the memorial bench donation at Seaside Links Golf Course. Is Amy Howell online? And if she's not, maybe somebody here in the room could do it?
Go ahead. Kathy will, yeah.
Kathy, thank you.
Of course. So the Parks and Recreation Commission received a request to donate a memorial bench at Seaside Links Golf Course. It would be placed at the 9th hole between the green and the path along the fence that's there, with a plaque, a memorial plaque inscribed with, "In loving memory of Brian Thompson, quote, never a bad day," end quote. On September 19th, the Golf Advisory Committee voted unanimously to recommend accepting the donation, and the Director of Public Works has reviewed this and had no issue. It will be the standard bench that is typically placed. I believe you have a copy of that graphic. It's the cycled plastic, which is a little bit more long-lasting and kind of conforming with the benches and throughout other parts of the town. So that is the request before you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move to accept the donation of a memorial bench to be placed at the 9th hole of Seaside Links Golf Course as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
And Mr. Shell says aye. Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
Aye. Now we'll get to the approving and signing the state presidential election warrant. Is Julie Smith online to present that to us?
I don't see her, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Do you want to
Go ahead.
continue on, Kathy?
Kathy?
Sure. So before you tonight, you have the state presidential election warrant. It basically is requiring your approval and signature of the ballot for November for the election. It includes all of the candidates that will be included, or the sections of candidates, not necessarily the names, but, and then the questions that will be on the ballot for this election.
I take it we need to, yep, Dean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I intend to support this. I do have a question. I cast my vote and dropped it off today. I was surprised to see question 7. I don't know the genesis of it. I did stop by the town clerk's office today. This ballot is presented to us by the Secretary of the Commonwealth with that question on it. There was no petition that was submitted with signatures to the town of Chatham, so I just wondered if at some point we could get some clarification. I guess you'll have to call the Secretary of State to find out this. It's not on the ballot.
Bless you.
Bless you. It's not on the ballot in every town in the Commonwealth, and, I'm sorry, on the Cape, and.
Well, it addresses the fourth, our.
The fifth district, yeah.
Fourth.
Yeah, so it's, anyway, I'd be curious to know. But in any event, I move that we approve and sign the presidential election warrant for 2024.
Second.
Shireen, do you want to comment?
Yeah, there was just, this came up suddenly, Dean, and nobody knew where it came from. I heard it's from some citizen that does not live on the Cape, but it is directed towards Peaks District, so, which is being directly impacted by the offshore wind project that's happening in the Gulf of Maine, so.
Thank you. I know there was some discussion of this on the radio this morning.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of an
Supposedly,
anomaly, but,
supposedly someone who lives in Hingham
yeah.
put this
I heard.
together. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
Mr. Shell says aye. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
And Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we are considering a special one-day alcohol license for the Paint and Sip event to benefit the Sampson Fund and Brewster Veterinary Hospital on Saturday, October 26, 2024. And I believe Ms. Smith is here to present that application.
Mr. Chair, just for full disclosure,
Please.
we are a client of the dog club. I don't think it jeopardizes or compromises my position on voting tonight, but just fully clear the slate. Thank you.
Glad to know you have a dog. I'm Patty Smith from the Sampson Fund for Veterinary Care, and we're a nonprofit that provides financial assistance to people who are faced with veterinary bills, critical veterinary bills, or emergency surgery for pets on Cape Cod and the islands. Our philosophy is that we think no pet should be euthanized or denied care just because the owner can't pay the whole fee. So we have numerous fundraisers throughout the year, and this is something new we hope to do. Ann Corrigan of Chatham Dog Club has offered her facility, and it's a small fundraiser on a Saturday afternoon. People come in, they have art instruction, and they end up with a piece of art to take home. And these have become popular events. Usually they're held at night, but we felt that this would be good to do in the afternoon. And we like to serve wine. And it'll be a small group, probably, I think there's room for 20 people. So there'll be 20 attendees plus probably 4 or 5 volunteers. So we request the wine and beer license.
Thank you. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I move to grant a special one-day alcohol permit to Patty Smith of the Sampson Fund for Veterinary Care for the Paint and Sip event on Saturday, October 26, 2024, from 2 to 5 p.m. at 82 Meeting House Road.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
Mr. Shell says aye. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
And Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
And Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you.
Next is our Cape Light Compact update on the 3-year plan. Do we have Maggie? Yes, Maggie Downey. Welcome.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening. I'm Maggie Downey. I'm the administrator of the Cape Light Compact, and with me is your appointee to the board, Brian Miner. Brian, I didn't know if you wanted to say anything before I got started, or?
You got the mic. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Anyway, just thank you very much. Brian is a very active and engaged member of the Cape Light Compact and represents you and attends all of our meetings, if not in person, remotely as well. So I'm here tonight to give an update on the Cape Light Compact's next 3-year energy efficiency plan, 25 through 2027. And in order to do that, I'm going to lead into what's happening now, some of the things that will be incorporated into the plan. But I just want to remind, for those of your audience who are watching at home, the Cape Light Compact, who the Cape Light Compact is. The Cape Light Compact is a joint powers entity that was formed by the 15 towns on Cape Cod, 6 towns on Martha's Vineyard back in 1997. We reorganized in 2017 as a joint powers entity under the Municipal Modernization Act that was passed by former Governor Baker, which enhanced the checks and balances for our treasury services. It removed the treasury services from the organization, has an outside function, again, strengthening that independent review of our finances. The Cape Light Compact is a highly regulated entity. We are regulated by the Department of Public Utilities for both our power supply program and our energy efficiency program. We have 3 primary functions. Power supply, which is providing an option for customers to choose their supplier. We are the default supplier here on the Cape and Vineyard. We negotiate the terms and conditions of a contract. We are not in the market. We're not purchasing at the wholesale market. We're simply negotiating the terms and conditions of a contract. We also run the energy efficiency programs here on Cape Cod and Martha's Vineyard.
Forgive me, I want to interrupt you, forgive me, but I think I see that we may have lost our internet connection and we may be visited by, are we good? We're good. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
That's
We're good.
okay, no,
Forgive
please.
me.
And then 99% of our staff and our time is spent on energy efficiency. And then last is consumer advocacy. And what that means is we represent the Cape and the Islands.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
We thought we were good, but we need to check something.
Okay, we're going to have a very short timeout here while they do what they have to do to make sure that we're functioning 100%.
This is not the first time this has happened today.
Really?
I was here from the
Weird. You guys have usually pretty good, decent.
My microphone is working fine. Can anybody hear me? All right, we're back online. Apologies, Ms. Smith, please go ahead.
No worries, thanks. I'll go to the next slide. I just wanted to give an overview, just a reminder, the Cape Light Compact operates on a calendar year budget. And so I wanted to just give an overview of participation rates for the town of Chatham in 2023. So we had a total of 570 participants in the energy efficiency program, and we returned over $800,000 in incentives and rebates to residential customers and businesses within the town of Chatham. For 2024, I just wanted to remind everybody that we do offer no-cost energy assessments for residents and businesses. Weatherization, which is air sealing and insulation, is covered up at 100%. Up to 100%, for all customers. And if you are income eligible or on moderate income, which means you're below 80% or below the state area median income, you're eligible for weatherization and insulation covered at 100%, so that's no cost. If you're above 80%, the program pays for 75% of the total cost of insulating or weatherizing your home or your business. Moderate income customers can now self-attest, meaning you don't need to submit paperwork. If the amounts and the income levels are on our website, if you are within those, you just simply need to disclose that you're a moderate income customer, and we'll have no cost sharing for insulation and air sealing. We also offer generous rebates for heat pumps. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts has set a goal of electrifying 1 million homes, residential homes, by 2030. And in order to advance and move that forward, we have heat pump rebates, a whole home rebate at $10,000. And if you're doing a partial home rebate, meaning you're leaving your existing heating system intact, you're just going to install heat pumps for shoulder heating or cooling, it's $1,250 a ton. And that kind of equates to approximately $3,500 to $5,500 per home. So it's about slightly less than half if you're doing a partial rebate. And those are just some of the rebates that are available right now in 2024. for customers. We also ran an e-bike program. We received a grant. We applied for and received a grant from the Mass Clean Energy Center it's fully subscribed. It went very quickly. But again, the state was offering incentives for low and moderate income customers as a form of transportation. So we provide enhanced subsidies ranging between $1,200 and $1,500 to cover the cost of e-bikes. We also have Energy Star appliance rebates that you can submit for room air conditioners, dehumidifiers, electric clothes dryers, and air purifiers. And all of this information and the rebate applications are on the Compact's website. We also ran the Cape and Vineyard electrification offering, CVO, which just closed, and that was in this 3-year plan, 22 to 24, we had approval to demonstrate for 100 deed-restricted homes, so single-family homes. We wanted to make sure that they were not left behind in any decarbonization efforts. So those who wanted to participate were eligible at no cost to have their fossil fuel heating system removed, replaced with a high-efficiency cold climate heat pump, and an induction electric stove, as well as a solar PV system. Again, since you are electrifying the home, we wanted to make sure that the energy burden was reduced, so we paired that with the solar PV, and 25 homes also received batteries as a form of resilience. Again, this was a demonstration offering that we have to report to the Department of Public Utilities on next year to see if this is a type of program would be expanded throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I'm very excited. We actually saw a grant from the Massachusetts Climate Bank, who received significant federal funding known as the Energy Saver Home Loan Program. The Cape Light Compact applied to be the concierge service provider, and basically we applied for this. We'll go to the next slide. It is a loan. It is a very low interest loan geared towards customers who residential homeowners who earn less than 135% of the area median income. Barnstable County, that's $166,645. This is a loan program. It's a 20-year loan, and I'll get to the interest rates in a second. But the income amount is for the person who's listed on the deed. So you can have multiple, unlike many programs, you can have multiple people living in a home, but if the deed is in your name and you earn less than this, you would be eligible for this low interest program. It has to be a single family house, which is 2 to 4 units is how you define single family, and we must demonstrate energy savings. So why did we pursue this, and why, how will it help customers? As I said, it is a low-interest loan, $10,000 to $100,000, and it is up to 20 years. The first 18 months are interest only. There are 2 levels of interest. It is a 0.5% for those who are below 80% of AMI, and 2% for those who are between 81 and 135% of AMI. Participating bank here on the Cape, the closest one is Cape Cod 5. As well as Bay Coast Savings Bank and Bristol County Savings Bank. What's exciting about this, and why I'm sharing this with you and leading up until the next 3-year plan, is there are a series of measures that you can see on the slide that are not authorized or I'm not able to offer through the energy efficiency program, but are very important to keeping our residents of Chatham and throughout the Cape in their home, especially our senior population that may be on limited income. So if, for instance, this will cover new roof repair. You may need new roof in order to do insulation. It will also allows for solar PV, which outside of those 100 homes, we're not authorized to use energy efficiency. So you can now take the Cape Light Compact's energy efficiency programs, rebates, or 100% incentives, and then pair that with the home loan to really reduce the energy burden for those customers that fit this income eligible. We also do water heating, tree removal, all different types of things that have been approved at the national level that we're not able to offer through the energy efficiency program. And our role in going after this grant we're called concierge service providers. So we will facilitate, we'll meet with the homeowner, we'll walk them through what's available, because there's a lot out there, help them navigate the best way to move forward so that they have the lowest out-of-pocket expenses, and they can get the most done to keep them in their homes with lower overall energy bills, and most importantly, so that they're comfortable staying in their home as long as possible. And we also just received, this will be announced next week, we finally have been authorized to offer a solar loan program for market rate customers. Again, this is not an income eligible program. We have a very small loan. Our interest rate is going to be below 3%, approximately 2.7, for customers who want to pursue solar on their home. With loan amounts are up to $50,000, and it's a 10-year loan. We also selected Cape Cod 5 through a competitive procurement process to service the loan. So once again, the Cape Light Compact is simply facilitating, having you fill out the application, and then a third party is administering the program. So you can see what we're trying to do as we're getting ready for the next 3 years is to take our energy efficiency programs, maximize all of the federal programs and all the rebates that are out there, and making sure that our residents and businesses are aware of them and have access to them so that they can choose the best path forward, determine what works. And we're here, and our staff here at the Cape Light Compact are available to help customers and businesses decide what's in their best interest. So where are we going for the 25-27 plan? There's been a shift at the state level. We now, by statute, under the 2022 Climate Act, have to comply. We used to just save kilowatt hours. I've been here for many, many years talking about kilowatt hours, reducing efficient lighting, reducing your overall energy burden. Well, state law has now mandated that the Cape Light Compact, and along with all the other program administrators, investor-owned utilities, now have a second mandate that we have to comply with, which is decarbonization. We are now given specific greenhouse gas reduction goals that we have to meet through the delivery of our 3-year energy efficiency and decarbonization plan. And this will be throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. As I said earlier, it is focused significantly on electrification. The goal is to, and the focus of the next 3-year plan will be those that heat with either electric resistance, oil, or propane, to move them off of those fuels onto high efficiency heat pumps, because they are cost less to run those programs through the heating and cooling than the existing systems. Natural gas systems are not the focus, though it's always encouraged if somebody wants to switch, because right now the economics do not work in their favor. If you switch from natural gas to a heat pump, you will be increasing your overall energy burden. You will be definitely significantly reducing your greenhouse gas emissions, but increasing your overall costs, which is why we're focusing on the other 3, oil, propane, and electric resistance heat. I think everybody, it's on our website. I think it's pretty well known, but the Act of 2022 also prohibits us from offering any rebates for fossil fuel heating systems. That's been phased out. We used to talk about having high efficiency furnaces and boilers for fossil fuel systems. We are no longer able to offer those rebates per state law. So as I talked about, what are the goals? Decarbonization, equity, and customer experience. We've had several recent studies, evaluations that have identified a significant customer group that have not participated, though they've paid into the programs through their electric and gas bills every month, but specifically moderate income customers and renters and small businesses have not been participating at the same rate that that have been putting into the programs over the last years. So the 2027 policy goals, as determined by this Commonwealth, will focus on decarbonization, equity, and customer experience. We have several small business enhancements that will support decarbonization. We're expanding access to the direct option pathway, what does that mean? A lot of technical terms. The ability for instant rebates, weatherization for small businesses, prioritizing main streets. We've been through Chatham, done many main streets. We'll continue to reach out and work directly. 100% incentives for charitable nonprofit organizations. This was something that the board actually came up with this recommendation over 6 years ago that has now been adopted throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Again, focusing on small charitable nonprofits that don't have the wherewithal to come up with a copay to insulate or to change out their lighting. They now have 100% incentives. And we will also be delivering, as I said, expanding what's available to renters and landlords. A lot of our small businesses rent their space, but they're responsible for paying the overall utility bill, so it's hard to engage the landlord to invest when there might not necessarily be a return for them. So again, many of the programs that we'll be focusing on will be offering up to 100% incentives for small businesses as a way to engage the landlord to help them implement and move forward with any recommendations. So this is what will be offered statewide, as I said, for residential and low-income customers, as well as moderate-income customers and renters. If you are a low-income, that means you're below 60% of the state AMI or SMI, you're eligible now for 100% with income verification. That's what that little checklist means. We have to income verify and prove that you're actually eligible for 100% weatherization, barrier mitigation, and that could mean anything from you have mold, vermiculite in your attic, need a new panel because you have knob and tube, and these things are preventing you from moving forward with some energy efficiency or renewable measures. And you'll also be eligible for 100% electrification, which means a new heating system, a high-efficiency cold climate heat pump. So at no cost for low-income customers, regardless of whether you own or rent the building, the home that you're in. Moderate income customers have also, with self-attestation that they're in this income credit, when they're in this income category, they can self-attest and will receive 100% weatherization. It is a turnkey pathway, meaning you'll use a vendor that's been selected by the Cape Light Compact, has been vetted, so that we know we're getting the best and lowest prices for any of the implementation of the measures. Again, 100% for barrier mitigation and electrification. If you decide you want to use your own contractors, there are still incentives, they're just not as rich. And the reason we have a turnkey path is because we are trying to keep some cost controls and not for the program. Market rate customers still have very generous incentives for, if you're a renter, regardless of your income, you are eligible for 100% weatherization, 75% for market rate customers, as well as funding available for barrier mitigation. And I talked earlier about the incentive for heat pumps. It'll be slightly higher. It's going to be $2,000 per condenser in the next plan for partial replacements. So again, big focus, I think, rich incentives for our low and moderate income customers as well as renters within the Cape and Vineyard and throughout the Commonwealth. So what are we doing? What are we planning? What is the board focusing on? It's compact enhanced customer service, the ability to triage the best program, identify incentives, and really our offices are in Yarmouth. We're available via phone. You can email us or you can come see us, walk in, with your electric bills, with your gas bills, and ask for help on what programs are out there. We have information on the tax incentives at the federal level, again, all designed to help customers reduce their overall energy burden. We're also working with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. They will be receiving $24 million annually from all of the electric and gas ratepayers to develop and diversify our workforce. It's no secret, I was listening to your cemetery secretary, we are all struggling to fill jobs within the Commonwealth. We have an aging workforce, especially in the utility and energy field. So we are working with our tech schools on trainings, both the Upper Cape and the Harwich Tech, Cape Tech, to make sure that we have programs in place that are training the next generation of workers so that they continue keep the lights on and the heat running. You have lots of information just on Mass Save data. I put this in there just for the audience, so it will be on your website. Anyone has questions, they want to know what's happening, how much money's been spent, where are the incentives going. We have tons of information, links on our website, as well as also available statewide. We do lots of marketing. We're always trying to expand our outreach, making sure that customers are aware of these programs. These are our programs. We pay for these programs every month on our utility bills. So feedback from customers, what's working, what's not working, what you'd like to see. We'd like to think we provide lots of opportunities to educate and expand information, but we're always open to other venues if we're missing something. Last two slides I just added as a result of actually with Town of Yarmouth asked me to put in some information on our power supply program. Our rates are always posted on our website. They change every 6 months. They will be changing again in January of 2025. I forgot what year we're in, thanks, 2025. I also put this in, slide in, which shows we've been doing this a long time. 2002 was the first power supply contract we negotiated. You can see the Cape Light compact rates are in green. The utilities basic service rates are in blue. There are times when we have been above, and there are times predominantly where we are slightly less than, I think almost 70% of the time, but we have been slightly less in our supply rates than the investor-owned utility. But it is a competitive market. Customers can choose their supplier, and we're always here to help. We frequently get calls when somebody just got something in the mail, they don't understand it. Should I sign this? We always say, I always advise never sign anything till you see all the details. But if you do shop the market, you can find good rates. You have to be a savvy shopper, and we're here to help to make sure that customers can do that. And then the last slide, which is always what people, and you can see from the previous slide, as what is driving higher prices. They are higher. They're higher than they were when they started. Those lines, graph lines, have gone up and up. And we broke this down into two slides: the supply side and the delivery side. The supply side is what the Cape Light Compact negotiates a contract for, and what's driving it are two things. We have public policy decisions on the supply side that are increasing the renewable portfolio standards, policies, laws that have been passed that are encouraging and requiring moving off of fossil fuels in order to respond and reduce greenhouse gases, respond to climate change. All of those things add costs to the overall bill since they've started. So there are public policy and compliance with law. We also see natural gas prices. And what's driving natural gas prices are two things, just for the audience. We have pipeline capacity constraints. We are at the end of the pipeline. Getting new natural gas lines into New England is very challenging. Building new gas pipelines in a very densely populated area is very hard to do. We have increasing demand for natural gas. In the wintertime, the majority of our 50% of the homes on the Cape are heated with natural gas. And in the wintertime, our electricity is also heated with combined cycle plants. So you have increasing demand for the same resource, which has limited ability to get here. And when you add that with the war in Ukraine, because the majority of our winter gas comes in the form of LNG, which is liquid natural gas, it comes in tanker tanks to Everett. As a result of what's happening in Europe and the inability to have access to lower cost Russian gas, our natural gas is being diverted, or in order to keep it coming to us, we have to pay prices that they would be competing with Europe. We're hoping as time goes by, things change, we will see some of these factors go away, and those will no longer be putting upward pressure on prices. And it's the same on the delivery side. That's your transmission and distribution increases. We've had rate cases, we've had new substations, we're hardening our infrastructure. And so all of these things are putting upward pressure on our utility bills. So that was my last slide. Here's just information on how, if anybody wants to sign up for our newsletter or to reach out to us, there's lots of information. So I know I went over a lot of material, and I probably spoke too fast than I wanted to, so I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Jeff?
Yeah, I just have a couple of comments and questions. I think you do a great job, Mag. You do speak quickly, but everybody can really understand you. I think you're very clear. I enjoy your presentations. Just how is the Cape Light Compact funded?
Funded?
Yeah.
We are funded by 99% of our budget is funded with energy efficiency funds. And energy efficiency funds are collected every month by all of the ratepayers on the Cape and Vineyard. They're collected by Eversource, and then they are returned back to the Cape Light Compact to administer the energy efficiency programs. That budget is a 3-year budget that is approved by the Department of Public Utilities.
And how many times can you change your power supplier? Is it,
A customer?
Yeah.
Or me?
Yeah, no, a customer. If I want to change, I've got,
You can
a non-Cape Light Compact power supplier. I can change anytime I
From
want.
the compact, you can change any time, so you can leave and come back. There's no restriction on that. And I believe it's the same for going to Eversource basic service. So you could jump between the two and watch the market. If you are going to a competitive supplier, if you've signed a contract, you may have to stay with that contract for a period of time.
Gotcha. And Nantucket's not involved? What's the deal there?
Nantucket is involved in the Energy Saver Home Loan Program. We're facilitating services for them for a fee, but not in the energy efficiency program because they have a different, the different investor-owned utility. When we started back in the late 90s, God, I'm dating myself, they were Mass Electric, whereas everybody else was Commonwealth Electric. So they had a different distribution company.
And are you and or Brian pleased with the numbers in Chatham signing up, 570 residents? I was, or I think that was the number.
Am I pleased with the numbers?
499 residents.
In Chatham, the hardest population to reach are second homeowners.
Right,
Second homeowners, we're always struggling to reach second homeowners. If they're here for 2 months of the, if they're only here for the summer or a limited time, they don't necessarily want to be having somebody come in doing a home energy assessment and insulating there. So it is making those connections on how best to serve and reach them. Some are property managers, working through property managers, and so we're always looking for and open to ways to do that. But that is our hard to reach, hard to serve market in the Chatham and many of our outer Cape towns.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you.
And I would just add that this is a complicated category. Energy and appliances and sources of fuel and energy. So on top of an already well-organized organization, this new complexity. And so I think the Cape Light Compact is responding with new programs, but 570 participants and $895,000 sounds like you could be satisfied with that. Like, it's okay. It should be a lot bigger. And so Maggie's primary audience is not the 10 or so people sitting in this room, but this slide is even a little complicated, but Maggie and her team want to be engaged by citizens, residents of not just Chatham, but other communities. So find a way, if your preferred way to interact with the service provider is not on this page, call Maggie at the Cape Light Compact and she'll help.
Have you plugged into our Energy and Climate Action Committee at all?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So apropos that, does, and the complexity is daunting, and it's and the business about not signing anything makes people, including us, reluctant to do anything. So my question is, if you move away from Eversource, does that, to Cape Light Compact, does that have any effect on any of the benefits that you're receiving, for example, if you have solar?
No.
None?
None.
Okay, thank you.
No, we receive one bill, regardless of who your supplier is. It wouldn't affect any net metering. And the best way for the audience, for anyone, is to call the Cape Light Compact and talk to our staff and schedule a home energy assessment. I mean, I always say it's our money. If nothing else, it's a good way to have the home energy assessment and find out, check, my home's in good shape. I don't need to do anything.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you. That was indeed very comprehensive, very understandable, and very quick.
Thank you.
So,
Very nice to
thank
see
you.
everyone.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, next, consider donation of road plates. Greg, and maybe some help from Rob, I don't know.
Hopefully. Greg Berman, your Director of Natural Resources. So I just wanted to go over pretty much what's been going on since the last time we chatted about the road plates. So this is road plates that were put down by 97 Tulipy Run. There was an initial $1 sales agreement that our town council worked with their council to convert to a donation agreement. That donation agreement is shown in the packet as a red line, and I believe one of the main sentences that the select board had an issue with was actually written by town council. So this is, it was slightly adjusted from that red line down to the current donation agreement. Our town council, noted the adjustments in that donation agreement as reasonable. I did go back to the applicant and the trustee to see if they would adjust it further. They weren't willing to adjust it further. This isn't a lack of willingness throughout the process. They have budged a bit along the way. This is apparently as far as they're willing to go through the donation agreement. And this time I do have our DPW Director, Rob Faley, to discuss the condition of the tide gate before the plate was put down, and potentially some, what would happen if we left it there, what would happen if it was taken out and restored back to original condition. But I think those were some of the questions I wasn't able to answer for you last time.
Before you do that, just to stay on the topic you were just on, can you tell us precisely what the language was that you asked for and that they felt was not necessary, or basically said no?
Right. It was my understanding that really that first sentence and slightly below it in that packet that discussed, let's see, agrees to release and hold the donor harmless from any and all claims, suits, damages, and liability of any kind, period.
That's under number 3. if you
Right.
see that.
It's the paragraph entitled Release, paragraph 3, and it's the first sentence. And
Right.
what did you ask for?
I asked for them to make that less broad and in such that it would apply just to the road plates. It was their understanding that it already just applies to the road plates. That this entire agreement only applies to the road plates.
Yep.
So that sentence that you just read, I think you read it, Mr. Chair. That was inserted by our town council?
The red line above?
Yeah, I'm looking at the red line version.
Right, so
in your memo. The
Yes,
town
so-
hereby agrees to release and hold the donor harmless from any and all claims, suits, damages, and liability of any kind. And it looks like, I'm guessing town council struck their language, which said that seller will not be liable for any indirect, special, consequential, or punitive damages, including lost profits.
That's correct.
Is that correct? And town council struck the last sentence in that section. In no event will the seller's liability exceed the price the buyer paid to the seller. That came.
Yes, and then after we reached this current donation agreement, town council was able to review it again and deemed it as reasonable.
But what you asked, I think what you asked, Mr. Chair, so you went back to the donor, and what did we ask them to do following what this board discussed? Did we ask them to take that provision out of there?
Yes.
The whole provision?
The entire sentence?
Yeah, so
The whole section, I
taking
guess.
that sentence, striking and making it into only applicable to the road plates.
So we were going to keep the first sentence?
Well, the first sentence would not be entirely struck. It would be reduced to only road plates.
It would be qualified.
So there would be a few words at the end that said liability of any kind, however they wanted to phrase it in relation to the road plates.
And their response, I'm reading between the lines here, is that when they say it already is limited to the road plates because the language says arising out of or relating to this agreement or transactions contemplated herein. So I'm assuming that's.
Well, but that's the second sentence. The first sentence, I'll be very honest with you. I read the first sentence that we're releasing them for their obligation to pay their real estate taxes. I mean, it says of any kind. I mean, there is no limitation there. I just think that's I think if you added.
I think you're looking at something different.
I'm looking at the
memo.
agreement.
Yeah, look at the memo. Page. It's in red. So it's qualifying, the sentence continues on after the word kind. I don't know if that's what I think they're saying back to us.
It includes the limitation arising out of or relating to this agreement or the transaction contemplated herein. I mean, if that's what it says, I don't know what is the agreement? I mean, the thing that the guy signed is what I was reading from.
Yeah, that's the original, I think. We don't have a clean copy, is it?
Yeah, I think that, I think,
The current donation agreement should have been included in the packet with the red line.
Right.
Separate.
So that,
this, I think it's this, right? Yeah, but
You're
to
right.
Dean's point, what the memo says is the change from town council,
so then.
all right, but here it is, current, but this is the current,
Okay, so
language.
so the document at the very last page is not the agreement we're being asked to approve,
yes, it is.
because that's different from,
This is it. This language is what's in the agreement that we're being asked to approve. I think.
I don't think it's as good as what's in red.
I'm sorry, the red line is from our town council, whereas
And they don't accept that.
they adjusted it down to the current donation agreement.
They turned it
and our
into two
town council-
sentences.
That was the back and forth.
They turned it into two sentences, and they kept the language about indirect, special, consequential, and punitive arising out of or related to this agreement or the transactions contemplated herein. They want all that stuff in there. Interesting.
The one thing, I don't have a problem with what they've said, and my colleagues may disagree with me, as long as that first sentence is qualified by arising out of, or whatever the language is that is later, arising out of or relating to this agreement or the transactions contemplated herein. If that qualification on the first sentence is there, then I don't have a problem with it. But the first sentence, as it is in this agreement here, which I think is what we're being asked to sign, I believe that relieves them of liability for everything, including their taxes or a parking ticket or anything else. That's just an error, in my humble opinion.
I mean, during the conversations,
Huh?
the,
Yeah, no, that's pretty clear. What?
Broad.
Yeah, well, I don't believe I mean, I don't know what the conversation was. We're putting Greg in an unfair position here because he's relating conversation that went on between lawyers, but this is a mistake. I mean, nobody could seriously argue that is an appropriate way to resolve this back and forth here.
It just needs to relate to the
Whatever,
plate.
to the, or
agreement.
we could say arising out of this agreement of transaction contemplated
Yeah,
hereby.
boom, that's all you
okay.
need to do, just
That's
add
okay.
that to that first sentence.
Yes.
yep, no, I'm sorry, Corey.
Well, I was going to turn the topic to a slightly different focus on the topic. I mean, I think because we were brought this before us on September 10th, and elements of the evolution of how these plates even came about is different on this cover letter than my understanding back on September's meeting, because I went back to the file and we were talking with town council and with the tape, and Jay was saying, well, he doesn't have a very strong feeling on this, really has to be brought to the board as a policy discussion. But what jumped out at me was and I quote this, how the plates arrived on town property was curious. And that's what concerns me, because we have a policy discussion, the condition of the road before all this started, during its construction in the future, how it's going to stand up over time, and how this could possibly translate to, other projects throughout the town. That's where I'm struggling with, because I think from a policy perspective, I'm less inclined to accept the plates to protect our future interests in other aspects of the community. I don't think it's worth taking this action. And never mind, worrying about how the document reads or doesn't read. I would stay far away from this. So.
Can I add something on top of that before Rob speaks? Because this goes to what I think we might be hearing from I thought Elaine Gibbs made a good point. We've had tons and tons of rocks going over these plates. We don't know the condition of the substructure and whether it has deteriorated as a result of the transaction, the transmittal of these rocks. And
I mean, I'm referring back to when I was on the planning board, you know, these kind of situations, these projects, usually some kind of have either conditions, performance bonds, some kind of element of protection to protect the community, the neighborhood, et cetera, from this type of wear and tear, to bring the road back to, you know, initial conditions. So I know this was kind of done in an emergency manner. It was kind of fast-tracked in a negative way, but just things roll really quickly. So the process was a little bit probably different than typical. So I just don't know where our protections are, or we had any protections put in place for this particular situation.
Sure. So, as Ms. Gibbs said, there were hundreds of trucks, 20 a day in some cases, and this was before the work was actually being performed. So even before the work performed, they were still massing stone on the property. So they didn't need a conservation permit just to do that prep work. So trucks were crossing over this causeway, significant weight, significant numbers of them. Town staff were concerned. I was concerned. We talked amongst ourselves. It seemed, and I don't want to completely talk for you here, Rob, but it was my impression that we strongly thought that road plates would be a good idea. So we encouraged the applicant to put down road plates before something happened, because the condition of that road had some sinkholes and some issues even before this trucking was happening. This has been an area we've looked at for some time for a larger scale redesign and remediation. But if the road plates are left, they could be left until that remediation effort. If not, Rob can, discuss, they would restore it to the original condition, but the original condition wasn't that great.
And I don't want to complicate things here, but I'm trying to, figure out how we deal with Corey's point, and it prompts the question from me. What happens if we just say, thank you, no thank you, we're not signing the agreement, period, done? You do what you want to, you can take the plates out if you want, you can leave them in if you want, but we're not signing the agreement. What happens?
Sure, so they would probably remove the plates, and at that point, it might be a good time for Rob to discuss, the condition before and, our strategy afterwards.
We're clear they would, what would be the advantage to them of removing the plates?
They wouldn't have to purchase the plates. Right now, they're just leased, but they would be purchased by the applicant, and then they would be given to the town.
So, and the lease period is for and who put them in?
That was Robert B. Auer.
Okay. And somebody else owns them at the present time?
I don't think it's Robert B. Auer. They leased it through another company. I don't know who that would be.
So
they're making a donation.
Well, no, I understand that, but
That's been the same.
we're having a problem with accepting the donation.
Exactly. So they would pick them up. They would remove the road plates because it's.
Great, if the donation is not accepted.
The donation is not accepted.
Well, the donor is Talippi.
Yeah, but Talippi doesn't own the plates. He's leasing.
Well, he's going to buy them and give them to us, I assume.
And do we want them?
So it was in conversations. Town staff thought.
Let me ask you a question. I'm sorry, forgive me, but so if that's the case, why don't we just buy the plates from whoever owns them and leave Talippi and reserve all of our legal rights going forward?
We certainly could. That's an option.
If you
That
want
might
the
be what
plates,
has
I
to
don't know whether
happen.
you want them or not, but I have the feeling you might.
So this was an opportunity to have the owner of 97 Talippi put the plates as part of the mitigation for the work being done on the property. So the Conservation Commission allowed some mitigation on site, but there's not as much room as there was due to the erosion. So they were encouraging some off-site kind of outside the box mitigation. The donation for tree work was just a check in hand. So that was I believe, somewhat easier. The road plates are in place. They seemed well installed. So that was an impression by town staff that, they're doing a good job right now, we think. So it was reasonable to have the town take them.
Well, but let me ask you this. If you've said he'll take them away, can he do that consistent with the mitigation agreement with the Conservation Commission?
So we did spell that out in the Conservation Commission agreement, that he had to make the plates available and that the agreement had a certain amount of time to do it. It didn't say that he had to donate them, but
does it say he can't take them away?
It does not say that, no.
So what makes you so sure that he can take them away?
Well, he does not have to provide them to the town if the town does not accept them. It did not say that there'd be no strings attached in the Conservation Commission mitigation language.
But the plates are in the road now, right? He's
Correct.
provided them.
Yes. Or they are in the road. I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, you're saying, I'm asking if he put the plates in, there's a condition, which I don't have in front of me, but there's a conservation mitigation condition that says you have to provide the plates, make them available, whatever the length, you got to put them in the road. They're there. Does that condition allow him at some point in the future to come take them away?
Oh, okay, I guess I didn't understand that before. So once the donation is made, if the town accepts the donation, then he wouldn't be able to take them after that. It would be town property.
Well, no, that I understand, but I'm saying if we don't accept, if we just say we're not signing your agreement, do what you want to with the plates.
Then yes, he could take them away at that point.
Consistent with the Conservation Commission condition.
Yes.
We're sure of that.
We didn't have town council review it. It's my understanding and their Conservation Commission's understanding that the mitigation is phrased such that the offer had to be made, good faith, and that there was a stipulation that the town had to accept them.
Greg, is he done with his work? Is this it?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna.
Relatively soon. It could be a matter of a week or two.
So once he concludes it.
So if the plates are removed, what is the security? We say we don't accept the agreement. Plates are removed. What is the security that the road will be brought back to its original condition, pothole, whatever? What is that? Where do we stand with that?
That's the responsibility of the applicant to restore it to the condition it was before the plates were put
But
down.
no other conditions, no bonds, no other mechanism that's available to the town?
Correct.
Ouch.
Yeah, there were lessons learned. We probably wouldn't do it this way again.
How much are these plates worth? 20,000? Sorry.
20,000 installed. The install is 4,000.
So let's assume our owns them, and we want to adopt the chair's suggestion. If we wanted to buy them from Robert B.R., we'd be paying about $20,000.
Would probably be slightly less than that, just because they're already installed, unless we removed them and reinstalled them for some reason.
They're used, so they should be discounted. And would our, or whoever owns them, sell them to us without condition?
Well, I mean, there would probably be a sales agreement, but.
They're yours.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
No, I just assume that does he need the plates now to complete his job?
Until the trucking is finished.
Till the trucking is finished. Would we like to have the plates after the trucking is finished? Do we need them?
So after this project is done, there's at least one more in the works that's probably not going to be at the same scale, but still going to involve the same kind of trucking and rock. So it would make sense to have plates there.
Thank you. Okay. I can't believe we can't, I'm sorry, Shereen, but I just can't believe we can't add an addendum to that first sentence and get over this.
Yeah.
Well, why can't they just say?
Well,
I mean, I really think that.
I agree with you at a minimum, but I've been moved over toward Corey's point of view here, which is, First of all, if the Conservation Commission said you got to put the plates in as a condition of your permit, that your order conditions, it seems illogical to me that they would say, but when you're done, you can take them back. They probably didn't say anything, but I just sort of think that we're being asked to grant a release here from all liability or liability that relates to the road problems in exchange for $16,000 or $20,000 worth of plates. And I'm not looking at this from a legal point of view. I'm looking at it from just a plain old business point of view that forget the agreement. If you insist, take your plates. And we'll figure out how, depending on what you folks tell us we need, we'll either buy the plates or we'll do whatever to mitigate, but we'll retain our rights against the owner. That's where I'm coming from. Dean? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Shereen, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Forgive me.
I've been very patient. No, just a clarification here. So, the stipulation that the road had to be brought up to whatever conditions, good, bad, or indifferent, existing conditions. So would it be contemplated that the owner would remove the plates and fix the road?
Fix it back to the condition it was beforehand.
Or
There's
does
a
he have
lot
other
more
options?
work to get it up to some kind of reasonable standard.
Okay, all right.
No, wait a minute.
I know where you're going.
So,
I know where you're going.
Thank you. So it's just, so the owner right now is leasing the plates. So what if we wanted to lease the plates? Because how long are we going to need these plates as a town?
Likely until we actually, tear out the tie gate and
that's a
reinstall
while
something
out.
better
That's a long
designed.
while out.
So, even getting to that stage, we're talking at least 3 years.
I was just wondering how much it would cost to lease versus purchase these from whoever owns them. Thank you.
My only 2 cents was, again, if it had to go to a scenario where the road needed to be brought back to its original condition, and there's other projects in the chute coming down that road, they're gonna pause and be like, I'm not doing it right now, because I'm gonna fix it, and, it's gonna be wear and tear, so maybe we'll deal with this further down the road, so it's a problem I don't think it's a problem I think we don't want to tackle in the manner that it's being presented. I think if we want the plates, we buy the plates. We think about the road conditions. I mean, the thing that makes me completely unnerved about all this is that we didn't have the mechanisms, at least in my belief, either a performance bond or something that was security to kind of protect the town in this one. But we don't have it. Lessons learned. I am not inclined to accept the proposal before us tonight.
Can I just ask, by the way, I'm with you as well, but Rob, do we want these plates?
I think if we have a need for them, whether it's at this location or other locations, we have aging infrastructure that occasionally we have a need for plates.
But I'm focused on this specific, I mean, if let's hypothetically say he takes the plates away, what are we gonna do?
So upon visual inspection, the superstructure, the span, the concrete span of the bridge was in really good shape, especially due to its age. There was no spalling or efflorescence or anything like that. It's the abutments. They are wooden piers. They're allowing sediment and fines to leach into the waterway, whether it's due to like tidal action or floods or just from migration from gravity. And that's what's creating depressions on the approaches, creating sinkholes. All that material is slowly migrating into the waterway, so we're rebuilding it. That's pretty much what we wanted the plates to cover, those spans. The heavy truckloads would just, the vibrations would further degrade those approaches, and that's what we wanted the plates for, to protect that.
So you're saying you don't, for normal traffic, even in the condition the road is in now, you don't necessarily need those plates?
Normal traffic is degrading the approaches to the road, so I would rather have plates in place on those approaches. We patched them, in my short time here, I think we've patched those approaches 3 times already.
Okay. Well, yeah, Dean.
Do we own any plates? Do we have any? We don't have.
We don't. We typically, if we have a large excavation like that, we'll hire somebody like Robert B. Hour, and they'll bring their own plates for us to use.
Well, I guess in some, I'm with Corey and Mike, and I don't like the fact that they wouldn't go along with the rather modest language that was proposed by town council, so I wouldn't accept it myself.
Could I just add one thing? That first sentence actually comes from our town council in the red line
Well,
version.
There's something, that first sentence, as it is written, needs, I don't care who wrote it, it doesn't say what we should have it say as a town.
But the way town council edited their language has the qualification arousing of that modifies.
Right,
It's not a-
right,
it's-
right.
The sentence doesn't end with the word kind in town council's version, and they wouldn't accept that. So,
So I think
it's not acceptable.
the only question that we ought to be clear to give Greg and Rob, clear positioning on is whether with the language, with the qualification that limits the release and indemnity to rising out of this agreement and the transactions contemplated thereby, whether with that language we would accept the donation agreement or not. That's the question here. And I say, I don't want to complicate things too much here, but we can, that would be a practical answer that if everybody else were in agreement, I could go along with, even though my business attitude is, well, you do what you want to with the plates, we're not signing this agreement.
Well, if I might.
Yes, sir.
The flaw in the agreement, the way it reads now, is exactly that. And if we added that, if they agreed to that language, I could agree to the acceptance of the plates. Because it sounds to me like long-term or longer-term, albeit we have issues, but we're gonna need the plates. We're gonna want the plates. That's what I hear. So, I mean, I'd go back, another bite at the apple and say, this is where we're hung up, and you just gotta agree to that language, otherwise.
Yeah, I was just telling the
I
board,
just tell them
the
what the
board won't
board said.
sign it without it, so.
We're not gonna sign it without it. I mean, that would be those are my thoughts.
If we agree, yeah, Cory.
I
If
wouldn't.
we need the plates.
I wouldn't, I'm just saying $20,000 for plates added to the budget. If we're gonna need them in other areas potentially, maybe let's consider adding it to the budget and figure out all the other, I hate to use the string attached scenarios, but just keep it clean. I wouldn't.
I understand, I just want to ask, you mentioned another project coming down the road, is it the same guy?
No, it's a different property
It's
on
a
Morris
different
Island.
Oh, okay. So we're done with this guy after this is over?
Well, I'm not sure we can ever say that with coastal property, but there's nothing expected after this one ends.
Is there any requirement for the next homeowner to have plates or provide protection to the roadway?
We would definitely not do it the same way.
So the
But-
answer is that could be a requirement of whoever else is traveling along the town road in order to do the rock revetment.
Yeah, it could be a requirement with a bond, with an inspection beforehand and after, but hopefully that, well, even if it is an emergency certification, we would require that.
Just one other comment. We did raise this issue when we heard about the 900 truckloads of stone going down to Morris Island. I remember it clearly. We go back and look, we talked about it, that it's gonna be damage to the roadway. They were gonna come through town, so we rerouted them up Shore Road, blah, blah, blah. And we were worried about the roads, but, again, you guys know where I am. I could live if we got the language we wanted, I could live with it, because I think we're gonna need them. Saves a step of downstream negotiating with Robert B. Hour or anybody. I mean, it's just, anyway.
I might live with it, but I'm beginning to think there's an attitude problem here. If they won't accept the language, the qualifying language of the first sentence, that troubles me. You want to go back to them and ask them? Corey has said, oh, absolutely not.
And I get it.
Very, very small. If we leave the plates where they are, the road was traveled on with hundreds of, with several, I don't know, hundreds of trucks prior to the plates. Some wear and tear, significant wear and tear, a suggestion has already happened to the road. We keep the plates there. At some future time, I mean, that, when we pull that back, we're gonna have a bit of a mess, potentially. That's gonna be on our dime. I think,
I'm sorry, we pull what back?
if we pull the plates back down the road,
Yeah.
whatever's underneath that is gonna come out of our pockets, the town's pockets. It's not gonna come out of our private.
So that's an argument to keep them in place.
No, I think they put it there, they need to remove those and put the road back in place to where it was before.
Yeah, but that's a lawsuit.
But, well,
That's a lawsuit. I mean, it's not like. you
that's my
just
argument,
tell 'em
is
to
there
do-
was no bond, there was no.
Well, I understand,
so-
but the effect is to make them do that, you're gonna have to sue them. I mean, I'm sympathetic to, tell them to pound sand, tell them, we don't like your attitude, whatever, but this has been going, partly this is the Conservation Commission trying to help us. There's a lot of water under the bridge already, and I think if we got the agreement the way we wanted it, leave the plates in place. It's not a perfect solution, but it's, we can move on as opposed to having to get into an argument about buying the plates and taking them out and lawsuits and everything else. Yeah, Jeff?
Did our town council speak to council, or did you guys speak to council? Who represented the town?
No, so this was just the councils did not interact directly. It was just red lines and letters going back and forth.
Well, did you have anything? That being the case, why not, let me suggest, let's instruct town council to talk to their council and get the language in a form that's agreeable to us. And if they don't, as far as I'm concerned, keep your donation. We'll buy the plates from Robert Briauer,
I'm with you.
or whoever.
Good, yep.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Just let's be clear, we're not signing the agreement unless that language that we're focused on, that we have right in front of us is in the agreement. If they want to put that in, we'll sign it. Otherwise, we're not doing it.
Yeah, understood.
Do we need a vote on that?
That's always good.
I mean, all right, so move to approve the negotiating position just articulated.
Second.
All those in favor, Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
Mr. Shell says aye, Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
And Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. No, that was fun. So next we have Town's Public Engagement Procedure. Shauna, welcome.
Good evening. Shauna Neely, your Communications Manager. Before you again tonight is the project public engagement process. You had the first reading of it last week. I incorporated the suggested minor edits to the procedure, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Also included is an internal worksheet that might have given you a better idea of how we would evaluate the projects.
Dean.
Thank you, Shauna. I had one suggestion on page 5, and it's the first paragraph, which begins, "Always update the community." The second sentence, which reads, "Acknowledging the contributions of the public diminishes the misconception that local officials are out of touch or do not listen to the community." I'm troubled a little bit by the tone of that, because it suggests that this language, that the undertaking, the acknowledgement is simply for public perception purposes. And I wondered if we could strike everything that begins with the word diminishes down to the end of the sentence and substitute something like helps ensure the confidence of the public in the attentiveness of town officials to public needs and concerns. Something like that.
Sure.
Do we have to adopt this tonight?
Nope.
I still would like to mull it over, and, if That's my sentiment anyway.
Mr. Chair, we've been holding this for about a year, working on it internally. And so may I suggest that it's a procedure, so if you do adopt it tonight, we can do, I think as Mr. Buckley had suggested, come back a year from now. And certainly, there's some course corrections that can be done if there's any specific public outreach that may not be listed here, but that would have benefit to the public as a whole. So right now, we have nothing. And what we have is just, Shauna's good work and having 12 people who are involved with projects work really hard to have consistency with communications. And that was one of the reasons why we wanted to document the procedure. But we can always change it if we find that it's not satisfying our needs or your needs as a select board.
Well, I appreciate that, Jill, and I'm very sympathetic, but my knee-jerk reaction has been, and I like, for example, your comment, Dean, I'd really like to have another look at it. And I appreciate the suggestion that we can look at it in a year, but I'd like to really be happy with it when we go out with it. So that would be my attitude. Maybe others feel differently. Corey?
No, I have no problem trying to flush this out a little bit better. I mean, essentially, this thing's not going to be set in stone once we adopt it anyway. We can amend it. We can make changes to it. Review it every year. There's multiple options. I think the intent is solid. I appreciate the intent of this. Maybe there's some elements that we need to tweak a little bit here and there if the board wants to work on a little bit longer. No objection to that. I think we're going in the right direction by bringing something like this forward because we don't have anything in place at the moment. And we're not going to know if it's going to work or not until we actually implement it and kind of evaluate it as it moves along. But if we want to take a little bit longer on this, I'm not going to give you any pushback on that.
Jeff?
Yeah, does this, and I'm fine with that as well, but does this give primarily the staff a framework from which to organize how we communicate about projects? Is that what you guys are aiming for here?
That is the intent, to
Okay.
bake communication planning
Yeah.
into projects from the very outset.
And have the staff agree that this is a coherent approach and one they want to apply kind of universally, depending on the acuity, the gradations of the levels, I should say.
Staff has
of the
reviewed it
project.
multiple times, yes.
I'm fine with waiting. I mean, I'd like to digest it a little bit more too, to be honest with you. I want to see if it really does drive that goal, that aim, if you will, of providing a framework for the staff. And it seems a little cumbersome to me, to be honest with you. But anyway, I don't mind waiting.
I was fine going ahead with it tonight, so I'm just going to take and say that, but I'll concede to the rest of everybody if they want to take a little longer with it.
I could have done that as well, but the one thing that I would like to feel comfortable with is I appreciate the effort to regularize and make and be consistent and treat similar cases similarly, and have that out for everybody to be looking at and operating with the same with the same framework. To me, it's always the exception that proves the rule, and I'd like to read this with the thought of, does it allow for the special case where there's a different consideration that needs to be taken into account? And, if you'll give me another week, I'll do it, and then we'll adopt it, and that'll be that.
Just, why don't we incorporate Dean's comments, and we'll do another review of it, and then we'll give you some time. So it won't come back next week. It can be, the last meeting of the month, or just wanted to come back to it, because we're going to tie into your goals and objectives,
Yep.
and this has been a consistent and longstanding goal of the select board about communications.
Okay, thank you. Next case. This is the proposal to amend the town's budget financial management policies to limit the ability of the town when borrowing money to exclude debt under Proposition 2.5, et cetera. Dean, I will let you present.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to keep this brief because I presented this a couple of weeks ago to the board, and this language is not prohibitive of calling the second town meeting, the special town meeting after the town election that followed a failed vote to borrow the money. But there's a memo in the file that I submitted to you previously. What's new since we last heard this, we did refer this to the Finance Committee. They met and voted 5-2 to recommend it. I was present at that meeting for the purpose of presenting the item. The chairman had contacted me. And to answer questions, I expressly did not ask them to vote in either direction. There was a very robust debate and discussion among the Finance Committee members, but that was their vote. Also in the material is, since then, we have a very short opinion of town council and emails from bond counsel and the town's financial advisors, all three of which say that they have no objection to this. So that's it. I will offer a motion just to get it on the table that the board approve the proposed amendment, but I know that we haven't substantively discussed this, and that may be something you all want to do, because last time we simply voted to refer this to the Finance Committee. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks. I just wanted to make a note about our town council's response. He did not have any problem with the non-binding policy, but what he did say at the end was that he said, as a council, I'm always wary of setting a policy that limits even superficially the options of the select board that I represent. I just want to make sure that was made clear.
Thank you.
May I respond to that point?
Oh, well,
after anyone else.
I was going to say, let's.
Did you make a motion?
Yeah, he made a motion.
I'll second the motion for discussion.
Okay, further discussion?
Further discussion.
Good. Jeff?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I'm somewhat ambivalent, believe it or not. I think that the danger with using this mechanism, if you will, would, if it were to become routinized and going forward, if our select board relied on it to use it, routinely, which it's kind of unfortunate that we've done. It's happened twice over the last year or so, last year or so. But a couple things. In each individual instance, I believe they're very unique. The Council on Aging vote was extremely unique in as much as it lost by one vote twice, which is, I think, never happened before on such a major issue in this town. So I don't think it was untoward to revisit it timely because of the nature of the vote. Plus, it was the first time we used electronic voting, blah, blah, blah. So there was enough, not cloud, but there was enough stuff going on that, in my mind, warranted the use of this mechanism, if you will. And the second time around, it's a very different circumstance in my mind. And again, this is why I don't think it ever will be routinized. We were approached by Shellfish Advisory and the waterfront groups asking us to break apart one of the items that was in one of the articles and revisit it. They could have just as easily, I believe, gone and done a citizen's petition. I got the 200 signatures and called their own special town meeting if they felt that passionate about that issue. And in fact, when we did go to town meeting and did have the vote, it certainly turned out that there was plenty of passion and plenty of support for that particular article. So town meeting weighed in, every time, I think, appropriately. And so we didn't, I believe, abuse its use. So those are my initial comments, and I'll wait to hear what else everybody else has to say. I don't believe that the wisdom of this board would have this mechanism become routinized. I do have a question. When the language of what Dean proposes, it says you would only really entertain this during items that rise to the issue of financial exigency or housekeeping purposes. And I ask, would the last two times, the two times we've used this mechanism, would that rise, in your estimation or in our estimation, to an issue of financial exigency and or on housekeeping purpose? And I guess I asked Dean that.
Okay.
I'm glad you did, because I expressly used the word exigency rather than the word emergency, because I think exigency is a broader category and includes emergencies and urgencies. In the case of the most recent town meeting, and I said this to the Finance Committee, there was an honest difference of opinion among this board as to whether that was urgent or not. I think 3 of us felt that it was, and 2 of us felt that it was not. So that being the case, when it was the wisdom of the select board by majority vote that this should go forward, that it was urgent, I don't think that that flies in the face of the spirit of this. The senior center was interesting. I suppose no one really talked about urgency, I think, when we talked about that. We talked about the 1 vote difference. And yeah, I suppose it was unstated that there was some urgency because of cost, the increasing costs, that project had already run up. So I don't see this as discouraging either case. That's my own comment on that. I can respond to Shireen's point, or the point that Shireen raised if you want. I can wait till others speak.
No, we let everybody, Corey, do you want to say anything?
My only 2 cents on this is reviewing it. I mean, there's a lot of philosophical elements to this conversation. The one thing that's kind of jumping out at me and why I will most likely support this is the recommendation from our Finance Committee, because they have scrutinized the Select Board's actions, giving us comments and recommendations of how we should or should not be doing certain things, and it was brought to them for a review. They did vote 5-2 in support of it, and I think that for me, it holds some weight. So outside of that, we can. I don't want to tie our hands on this stuff, but I think it's a reasonable proposal.
So, I'm not in favor of this. That probably won't surprise you. I want to start because not because, I mean, I'm glad you focused on the Finance Committee. I watched the meeting, and I completely agree with committee member Sprague, who was very articulate and really quite unequivocal in articulating the notion that it's up to the select board to propose whatever to the town meeting, the legislative body, and it's up to them to vote, and it's their right to vote. She felt very strongly that there should not be a limitation on, and it's not. It may be the characterization by some people that it's it's a misuse of what is legal, but it's procedural. It's not a financial policy, and I agree with that. But at the end of the day, I think the question here is making policy. How does policy get made? Subject to the obvious exception that anybody can make a petition article, submit a petition article. It's up to the select board to decide when, as, and if a matter is important enough to present to the town meeting, whether it's special or annual, and then it's up to town meeting to dispose of that proposal, however it sees fit to do that. I think that the argument that it's becoming routine because it happened twice in a row, if that's the issue, then we should say you can't do this if you've done it in the last 2 or 3 or 4 years or whatever. And that would, to my mind, be silly. And as to the characterization that it somehow feels dirty, I just think it's hard not to conclude that, or at least be tempted to think that some of the argument here is that people who didn't like the outcome or who liked the outcome of the annual meeting don't want to have, even though it's appropriate and legal and the select board decides to do it, have that brought back before the town meeting, because it might produce a result that they don't like. And I think, you know, that's not a, to me, that's not a relevant consideration. So for all of those reasons, I think the question that you've answered, Dean, I think you can make the case, although I would say one case, I mean, if we had a terrible storm and only 200 people showed up at a meeting, and something that we, you know, we needed it, but basically only 200 people showed up, and it missed the requisite vote, and it got a very strong vote at the election, that might not pass muster under this policy, but that to me would be a case where we should very seriously consider whether to call a special town meeting. I think that you know, the argument for the COA was twice 2/3 minus one of town meeting said we want this, and moreover, whatever the number was, it was 60+% of the election said we want this. That to me was, you know, a case to go back and say, are you sure? And as Jeff says, the answer was, yeah, they were sure. But that doesn't mean that it was wrong to ask the question again. And so for all of those reasons, I think this is not a good thing to do, and I will vote against it. Dean?
Yeah, I just want to respond to a couple of the things that you've said. First of all, it's not a limitation. The select board can call as many special town meetings as they want. It's a statement of philosophy. And secondly, the example that you gave about the town meeting attendance being diminished by a storm, I think that circumstance falls within the category of urgency that would allow or encourage the select board members to call a special town meeting. I want to address the sentence that Shireen called attention to, and I'm glad you did, in town council's opinion. He says that said, first he gives, it's sort of, if I can be frivolous, it's almost a Henny Youngman approach here. His opinion is one-liner. Having reviewed this, it is certainly legal, especially whereas it is just a non-binding policy. That said, as counsel, I am always wary of setting a policy that limits, even superficially, the options of a select board that I represent. I take issue with his inclusion of that sentence in his legal opinion. That's not a legal opinion. That's a gratuitous policy observation. He's an outside consultant. He is not a department head. In my previous job, I was a department head. In my previous job as an in-house counsel, I was a department head. I think it's inappropriate for outside counsel to be offering a policy opinion as part of his legal opinion. So it may be useful. It may be it's his opinion, but I find that a bit out of place. Thank you.
Thanks. I think that Jeff framed up the two scenarios quite well as to why we went about what we did with the special town meetings. And I don't have any problem with it. I thought Shellfish Advisory were asked by, you know, they took what Finance Committee said, bring these back to us on merit. They did. As Jeff said, they could have gotten a 200-person petition signed. It was clearly evident by the results of that town meeting. And I do believe there was some issues of urgency on that with the permitting that occurred. I want to keep our options open. I don't want to be limiting in this, so I'm not going to support it either.
We have a motion and we have a second. I guess I shouldn't, but I'll just say, if the argument is the policy doesn't really change anything, and that the cases that we talked about would have come out the same way under the policy, then to me, that means we have appropriate and wise judgment, and we should deal with this on a case-by-case basis and not even with a superficial or whatever policy. So with having said that, I'll, unless somebody has anything else they want to say, I'll call for the vote. Mr. Metters?
I will vote in favor of.
I'm sorry?
I will vote in favor.
In favor?
Yes.
No.
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 Aye.
And so the motion fails.
I watched the Finance Committee too, and I watched Joanne. She was very articulate.
She was great. She really was.
She was good.
Okay. Moving right along to the next item of non-controversial discussion here. Consider amending the meeting public presentation policy. Mr. Metters.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I could joke and say this is my annual request, but I think it is a well-deserved conversation that we need to have. I mean, we've all served as chair of this board, so we can all reflect on how it takes to run a meeting, the mechanics of it, and what have you. This is philosophical. This is about process, and my issues with the way we've operated for the last couple of years is we don't have what I would refer to as a clear and consistent policy. We have meetings. Sometimes we say that we're going to address public input during the beginning of the meeting. Sometimes we're going to make exceptions in item A, D, F, whatever. We'll make it exceptions on the fly. I don't want to take away the chair's ability to make some alterations. I think the chair should maintain some flexibility and some discretion. But I want a program or policy that encourages public input. We have a lot of people that aren't used to attending these meetings. They come for the first time and they're nervous and they don't know how to speak, when to speak, what they should say. So having a clear and consistent policy, I think, is would benefit the end results. So basically, my amendments would go back into the public comment on agenda item element or segment of our policy, is that I think we should return back to having public comments during each agenda item conversation. Dialogue happens, questions get brought up, new information, difference of opinions. Sometimes the public isn't crystal clear on what the board's position is on an agenda, so they may or may not even want to speak on it until they kind of understand what direction we're going in, what motion we may or may not be taking. But it's about perception, it's about policy, it's about process. I think going back to something similar, or frankly even the old way of having the items commented on, conversations during the actual item, is a better result driven. I don't, and I would want to make very clear, I wouldn't maintain an option of having public comment at the beginning and at the end, because then it gets almost too complicated. I don't want to have two snippets of, well, you want to have a meeting and public comment at the beginning of the meeting, and then all of a sudden we go to agenda F, and then someone goes, oh, I forgot to ask this question. Let's just have a clear, clean, concise policy. So I know I'm maybe running uphill here, but I do believe that reflecting on the last couple of years, we don't have a clear and consistent policy. We haven't performed in a clear and consistent policy. And I think that reverting back to the previous mechanics would be the benefit of the community. So that is my pitch. I'm happy to answer any direct questions from the board members. But I do appreciate you putting this on an annual basis for me to give another shot at it.
Thank you. Dean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When this policy was amended a few years ago, I supported the amendment. I think, Corey, you were a minority of one. But I've watched what's happened in the intervening years, and if you look at what's happened since we made the change, the exception has become the rule in most cases. because in most cases involving controversial topics, we've allowed public comment, and I don't think public comment has been a problem or impacted negatively on the conduct of the select board's business. And I do agree with the importance of having a consistent policy, so I would support reverting back to the original. I've changed my position. I would support reverting back to the original way we did things here in Chatham. Thank you.
Sheree?
I take a different tack on this because I think as we have, we have the public comments on agenda items, but we do make exceptions to the rule when it is something that is controversial. A lot of this is, we're not disallowing public comment by anybody who wants to speak on any agenda item. And I just feel like I feel like this is an efficient way to be doing our meetings. It's our meeting to conduct, and it would be my hope that we continue to do it the way we're doing it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, no, I appreciate Corey's annual perseverance. You do represent, I think, a certain segment that would like to be able to weigh in on every single agenda item. I've been at this for 17 years on our school committees and 13 years, or in my 13th year, on the board. And I do think it's very important that it's up to the chair to have discretion on how the meeting is run and who's called upon and to weigh in on what. I really like the way we run our meetings now. I don't see a lot of variability. We've been more inclusionary on controversial, more of agenda items with much public interest. We've been very inclusionary. Some of us more so than others. And we let folks speak their mind. And I believe that we get, in our formal meetings and in our informal meetings, a ton of public input as individual members of the board, and also as we sit here and we hear from the public before and after and during when the chair allows. So I'm very much in favor of giving the chair discretion, and I think the chairs have done a good job, no matter who was chair. I think the chairs have done a good job allowing input by our public. So I'm not looking to change. I understand you do bring it up annually. I get it, but I'm not going to vote for it. Thanks.
Can I just respond to a few?
Yeah, please.
So, our previous policy, the chair maintained some discretion, and I'm not looking to remove that. I would not support removing the chair's discretion. Like I mentioned, we've all served as chairs. It's an important toolbox that we have to run a meeting. The criticism I have and the input I received is citizens don't know when or how exactly to prepare, because there are contentious issues that come before us. And how they may prepare for an agenda item at the beginning of the meeting, it could be different than during a dialogue, when there's information that is provided both from the public to us back to the public. There's a dialogue, new information it's a flowing conversation. Sometimes people are shooting blind because they're not quite sure where we're going with the topic, maybe not have all the information. I mean, we have the packet, but new things get brought up during our dialogue that may or may not influence how they provide impact to the board. There's also, a sense of people get nervous coming before us. And if they know really where we were heading with the conversation, then they feel more comfortable to engage with us and have a discussion with us. When we bring it to the beginning of the meeting and it's basically, here's what I think, which I'll put aside his, they don't know how far to go with it. Their comfort level may not be quite there. And another little mention I want to make is many times people provide this information at the beginning of the meeting, and by the time we get back to the agenda item later in the night, half the questions we've not responded to or may not necessarily respond to in full. There's a disconnect in the process. So I like keeping things together. I advocate for this every year. I would go back to it. The chair The chair should, again, chair keeps his discretion, yes, but I do think the old policy was a better product, provided a better product for the community, so.
So I'm just going to be real quick here. You and I have talked. I don't think that that's the. I appreciate what you're saying. With respect to what you are saying, to me, the importance of input is to get views from the public, whatever they may be, questions, whatever. Make a contribution. But the dialogue, the back and forth, the how do we come to our own point of view, for me, is this conversation, the five of us. We are the board members, the public is the public, and they're entitled to contribute and so forth. But I think there really is a principal difference between a contribution, whether it's a question or a position or whatever it is, on the one side, and a participation that gives them basically a role in the development of a position, which I think is not, that's for us exclusively. And I think that I'm very comfortable. I realize it's not your notion of consistency, but to me, it's perfectly consistent to say on big issues, controversial issues, issues that we know we got a whole bunch of people in the room, maybe we don't know what they think, but we know they're here to talk about it. Fine, let's make a special case and say that that the public participation will be alongside the board in that case. Or when you can anticipate it, we will tell people in the packet that it's invited. But I think that it invites too much inefficiency and elongation of the meeting if every single every single item has to pause or include commentary from the public. I think it's much more efficient to do it at the outset, generally speaking. So with that, I know you, Mr. Holgren, had a comment you wanted to make, and I see Ms. Gibbs also would like to speak, so go ahead.
Yes, good evening again. John Holgren, South Chatham. Yeah, I waited around for 2.5 hours to say this. That's fine. I think for me, as being one who occasionally does comment on these things, being a non-resident taxpayer and so on, obviously it's one of my opportunities to throw some input in. And to me, there's two different types of comments. There's people that have the prepared canned speech, which they get up and you're going, oh my God, they're going to read the whole thing. Then there's people like me who maybe, jot, a couple of notes on a piece of paper and go, okay, here's what I'm going to say. And a lot of the times what I've said is something that I didn't know at the beginning of the meeting. Once I hear the presentation, sometimes when I hear you guys come up with an idea and I go, okay, but what about, or have you thought about this, and that type of input has sometimes apparently, helped for you guys to come up with some, maybe a better solution. And that's what's missing now is, in some cases, I can't anticipate what you've come up with as a solution until, at that point in the meeting. And so therefore, I think, having the idea of, and obviously I'm not going to speak on every, there's generally, maybe there one thing or two things that I'm giving me I might speak on. So again, this is totally off the cuff, as you can tell, I got nothing prepared, but it was just that back and forth of sort of trying to improve the product that you come up with is what my goal is. I've never tried to be, negative, and so I always try to be positive and say, hey, or in some cases, maybe just phrasing, some word or whatever, maybe maybe you should use this instead of that, or whatever. But that's been my way I want to contribute and help get a better product. And I can't do that necessarily at the beginning meeting because I don't necessarily have all the information. So that's sort of my basic concept.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Ms. Gibbs?
Yes, Elaine Gibbs, thank you. Chatham. The one place where public participation, questions, and comments should be encouraged is at the select board meeting. It is the only place where it is televised, where it can be seen on demand for people who can't see it in a timely fashion, and where there are minutes. This agenda package tonight had 178 pages. It didn't even appear in the packet until 5 o'clock on Friday night. There are multiple major issues here. There were 5 topics that affects every single person in this community. It's rare that after the public makes comments and asks questions at the beginning of the meeting, that they're even acknowledged or answered when it finally comes up on the agenda. It's happened to me many times, and sometimes hours later. Special interests from around the Cape and the state come here. Some are private businesses, they're nonprofits, and they're permitted to make extensive presentations, and the select board interacts with them. Yet Chatham residents and taxpayers don't get that same privilege. I think the Cape Cod Light Compact today was a classic example of that. That went on for 45 minutes. There was no way that someone could have read that entire packet and been able to comment on that at the beginning of the meeting. You know, it turns out it's only available to certain people, certain incomes. Taxpayers are paying for it. It's in our bills. There are a boatload of questions we could have asked for that. And yet they are given a privilege that we don't get as taxpayers. I think this policy is way too complicated. It may be legal, but I believe it is intentionally discouraging public participation. As an example tonight, what you should have done was allow Corey to make his presentation, and then you do what the ZBA does. You defer to the public before you weigh in. You guys have already weighed in right now. So anything I say to you right now, I already know how you're going to vote. You've already decided you don't like it. So what is the point of people doing this if you don't allow us to comment before you all go on record and say how you're going to vote? The ZBA allows a presentation, and then they go to the public and they say anybody can speak. And then before they start discussing it, they take into consideration the comments from the public. And you talk about wanting input from the public, but you're not showing that. You are not showing that. And if we're willing to put in the time and sit there for 3 and 4 hours and read 178 pages, the least you can do is give us the opportunity, when it affects all of us, to be able to have an opportunity to attempt to influence your decision. I think it's wrong. You know, you have basically said tonight that it's not efficient. It is not efficient to listen to us. But we're hearing that loud and clear. And you can say all you want about having public participation policies and all kinds of things and how you interact with the public, but you're not doing it. So I would hope you would take these into account. And you can't say that you're for outreach and stakeholder involvement, and then the one place where it is most critical and available to the public, you are discouraging it. So that's all I have to say, but I'm very disappointed in the way this has been handled. And I think it was ironic that initially the public policy, you didn't change it till the last minute, that you allowed us to comment during it. I mean, I think that speaks volumes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Buckley?
Yes, thank you. I want to echo, I guess, what Mr. Hallgren was saying. Perhaps I might put it another way that could be better appreciated. And that is that I would prefer, on a particular subject that I'm interested in, hearing what staff has prepared. I look at the packet, I read what they've presented to you, and then hearing your thoughts, because you're all very thoughtful. And I'm a curious person, and I'd like to know, maybe there's some aspect to this that I'm not appreciating. And so rather than hold forth before you even speak, I'd like to hear what you all have to say and in reaction to staff reports. And it could be that, they've covered all the points that I was concerned about. I don't have to say anything. but you don't know that, and that's okay. But it's better for me to hear what you all have to say first, and how the conversation is being framed, and what the points of contention are, or whatever it is, and then it could be that after all said and done, there may be something that I go, oh, they haven't talked about this aspect or that aspect, and how could they? I mean, I worked for many years mowing the Seaside and Union cemeteries with my father. Maybe there's something I might possibly know that nobody tonight knew about maintenance of cemeteries, or not. But I'd like to hear what everybody else said first. I'm not going to hold forth on how I put flags in and out of the holders and so forth and so on, and what the best equipment is to buy until I hear what people think first. But that's just an example. And the other part is, a public engagement policy. I've spent the last 15 years attending conferences about this. I mean, it was something I was very interested in from my federal career, the idea that the public engagement aspect was neglected and was the weak link in the whole thing. So anyway, I'm glad to hear that finally, after all these years, before I go into the nursing home, it looks like it's finally something might happen as far as standardizing methods so that best practices can be shared across the board. And so all I'm trying to say is that I think Florence Selden, when she was chair, did the proper thing and maintained discretion as far as making sure that people move things along and so forth, and they weren't long-winded. But you don't have to. The format now begs a 5-minute speech in the beginning, as opposed to just a follow-up at the end. So it is actually more efficient, I believe, and effective, because you can be efficient and not be effective. And if the effect is to try to capture as much intelligence and wisdom as possible, then I believe it's to let you all go first and for us to go second. And then, of course, you can wrap up with your, oh, I didn't know that type of remarks, and make the best decision you can. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything else? Do you want to make a motion?
I move to amend our policy to return to our old standards and procedures.
Second.
All those in favor, Mr. DeCastro?
Aye.
Mr. Shell says no. Ms. Davis?
No.
Mr. Dykens?
No.
And Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Thank you. If I may, I will say one thing here. I think on this subject, I think Jill does a good job in the first instance of anticipating agenda items that are likely to attract the kind of interest that makes it make sense to have public participation alongside of the board. I try to add to that when we talk, preparing the agenda, and then sometimes it develops that it's clear that that would be appropriate, as tonight I did. You can argue whether that was appropriate or not, but I just want to add, anybody on the board who feels that a particular item needs to have public input at the same time as the board is discussing the item is welcome to twist my arm or pass it on to Jill, and those wishes will invariably be respected. So with that, I'll turn to the next item, which is, where are we here? Select board officer roles or on committees, boards, commissions. I think that's you again, Corey.
Sure, a little lighter topic here. First of all, thank you again for putting this on the agenda. I do appreciate the broadness of the request, but I'm going to just kind of cut to the chase, and if there's other elements of our roles and responsibilities, happy to have that discussion too. And I'm going to be very, very clear, but I know there's going to be some perceptions, and I've had some conversations. This is not a comment or analysis or attack on any individuals. This is about process and perception, checks and balances, and what I philosophically believe is a better or actions that we need to consider as serving the voters. So my main concern is that having the responsibility of the chair of this body also serve as the chair of the trust. And again, this is not a Corey and Mike issue. This is, and I'm going to get to where I'm heading with this. When I was the chair of the select board, Mike was the chair of the trust. We had both responsible roles for our bodies.
Forgive me, who was chair of the trust?
You were chair of the trust.
Not while you were chair of the board.
You were serving on the trust.
I wasn't appointed to the trust as such, as distinct from my presence on this board until October of 2023.
Well, I guess.
And so, just forgive me for interrupting, but as a matter of fact, you were the chair of both boards when the select board was also, for all intents and purposes, the Affordable Housing Trust Board.
Fairness. My point in that is, at one point in time, we were representing. I was representing the select board. You had your role on the new trust, on the newly formed trust, and we were working on the RFP process. My point is, at one point in time, we were making decisions that we philosophically disagreed in, what was in the best interest of process and policy. Should we go into executive session, how we proceed on certain issues. And we each had our own kind of role in what was in the best interest of the group that we were helping represent. We took different positions. If I was the chair of both committees, as an example, I don't think that is a benefit to the community because there's really no check and balance. So I know we have very strong feelings. I don't think we need to go back and forth. I need to give some very long speech. But I do think moving forward with the perception of the chair of the select board and chair of the trust being the same individual is going to potentially create more issues down the road. And there's only two solutions I can see in having this. One is a very simple policy amongst the board that we amend that and make it the chair of the select board ineligible to serve as chair of another board or committee, as such the trust. The other way is a charter change, which we could bring to town meeting, which I would actually support that area because that would not take effect until the next town meeting. Let the voters weigh in, think about how they feel about the process, and they decide one way or another. And if the charter change passes, that's where we move forward. If the charter change falls, then we know where the voters feel. Because there's been a lot of dialogue back and forth that I've, in conversations, public social media posts, public comment and criticism about the process. If they feel strongly enough about it, they'll vote in favor of a charter change. If they don't feel it's that necessary, then they won't. And they've had their sense of weighing in. They've weighed in on a very significant element of our procedural government, and the results will be what the results will be. So I'm not going to make some long speech about it. The agenda item says consider select board roles and committee board commission's responsibility. Anything else you guys want to bring up for dialogue, happy to do that. But that is the main point of my agenda request tonight.
Okay. Shereen.
Corey, I have a question for you, okay?
Absolutely.
So you are bringing up just the Affordable Housing Trust Committee,
Because
but we have OPEB.
OPEB, we don't really have officers. We've never really operated as in a formal officer scenario.
But it's always been assumed that the chair of the.
By charter, yeah.
And it's always been assumed that the chair of the select board is the chair of the OPEB trust. I mean, it leads it.
It hasn't always led it. No.
When has there been an I don't know the history of who chaired that or who didn't. My point being, and my other point being, I think Mike brought it up too, is before the Affordable Housing Trust moved into this new trust, the chair was the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust. So I'm thinking this is coming down not to the actions of the, it's not coming down to the position. I think it's coming down to some issues that people just didn't like happening. Like, I think that this is about something different. I mean, if it's just about the Affordable Housing Trust, and it's coming down to some of the decisions that the Affordable Housing Trust has made about some of the projects going forward. I'm thinking that's what I'm feeling here, Corey. Because I hear from people who like what work is being done by the Affordable Housing Trust. They like the makeup of the trust. They like that it's a separate entity, and they don't have problems with it. I can't. I don't have somebody in my ear constantly like berating me or telling me that they don't like the Affordable Housing Trust and what the work that has been done and the role of the chair and the vice chair and what positions. I'm just deeply concerned that this is more a specific and not a policy.
And I appreciate it, I really do. It's, for me, it's more about checks and balances. Like, I would not want to be the chair, I personally would not want to be the chair of the two existing bodies. I don't think that would be fair. I think there's potential conflict in the position at times, depending on the topic. So I'm just looking for having this dialogue, because we've had, I think we can recognize there's been enough criticism or comments made about it. So we just have a dialogue about it. I am not looking for an action right now, and that's why I'm suggesting a charter change, because it would affect the future about how we move forward, and it may or may not even pass. I'm just throwing it out for the voters to kind of weigh in on this.
The other piece to, I mean, I think it's happenstance. I mean, maybe it's not happenstance. I think having, being appointed to the Affordable Housing Trust by this committee as a select board member, and Mike as well, I just feel that we've been entrusted, but there's also a communications thing that goes on. I think having the chair be, and this might not always be the case for this board, it could be somebody else, definitely could. But in this instance, this is the first time out with this new trust. I think it was by default that we wanted to see somebody that had the liaison and the relationship with this board be that person. Otherwise, Mike would not have been nominated and then voted by the trust itself. And I just want to make that point, that there are some good to having one of us be representing in the leadership role for that committee, and that is about communications, connectivity with this town manager, connectivity with this board, that I think moves things more positive than what I'm hearing from you.
I just think it's curious, I'll say that we lived with it before, but now we can't live with it. So I just scratch my head a little bit. I think it's more about the results of the work rather than the process and/or the positions. And I do think there's some synergy, to be honest with you. If you have the right person leading both, I think you may get more results and get on a road to success with greater alacrity than if you had others in those positions. I think communication is improved, and I think efficiency is improved. And stupid as this sounds, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm pleased with the results of the Affordable Housing Trust, as you all well know. And I do think it takes such a long time to get stuff done, as we all know. I think having the chair of both right now is an advantage, to be honest with you. So I don't see any issue with it, especially we lived with it before and no one said boo. We weren't doing anything. So, and now that we're doing stuff and some people don't like the outcomes or the results, then it's an issue. In my years on the select board, the chair of the select board's always been a member of the OPEB, and I think, frankly, it's run by the treasurer, but I think the agenda was probably set by the treasurer. But I think that either the finance committee or the member of the select board, the chair of the select board, runs the meeting. There's always been another member of the select board that's appointed. That's never been an issue. I don't have an issue with that either. If the chairman of the OPEB was also chairman of the select board, there's no issue there. It's good. It's a good thing. It's efficient. You get stuff done. So this is curious. I started with that, I'll end with that. Thanks.
Yeah, I want to address 2 points that were made, and then I want to speak more broadly. First, with respect to what was in place before as the Affordable Housing Trust, it was essentially the select board with 2 other people. So it made sense to me that the chair of the select board would be the presiding individual, because 5 of the people on that 7-person board were select board members. We don't have that now. With respect to OPEB, Kathy, at my request, provided the declaration of trust. I don't know if we have the town meeting vote in here, it may not be, but is it? We just got this. But anyway, is there a town meeting vote? The town meeting vote simply is a vote to create the OPEB trust. Doesn't specify.
You're talking about the OPEB trust?
The OPEB,
okay,
OPEB
sorry.
trust, yeah. So the OPEB trust, and I might have seen this in the past, the declaration of trust, which we have an unsigned version of, apparently a signed one doesn't exist, says that the Board of Selectmen shall call for the first meeting of the trustees, and the current chairman of the Board of Selectmen trustees shall serve as the initial chairperson of the trustees to facilitate the organization of the trustees. I think Jeff is correct in my service on the OPEB trust, and I'm a trustee now, as you are. It's been the town treasurer that's prepared that agenda, and the meetings really were never really conducted we never organized elected officers. It's been very informal as to whether there was even a presiding officer. The town manager is present without a vote. And I don't know what to say beyond that. Maybe the trust should be, maybe the OPEB trust should be electing officers. I want to say something more broadly about this, and I'm more supportive of, strike the word more, I'm supportive of where Corey's going with this, and I differ with my other 3 colleagues.
I haven't said anything yet.
Well, I'm anticipating. You can correct me if I'm wrong. If there were to be a change, I would support something only if it were prospective only and would not apply to the current year. I don't mean calendar year, but current select board year. And I would go more broadly and not limit it to the Affordable Housing Trust. I think the Affordable Housing Trust is the area where I see an issue as being more pronounced. But historically, we've had multiple boards, and we've had a number of boards and committees in my time, like the Eldridge Garage Committee or Chatham 365, where we have had select board members present. But the officers of those committees or task forces were not select board members. I wouldn't limit it to just the Affordable Housing Trust if there were to be a limitation or a prohibition. I would apply it to all boards and committees, and I don't think any officer of the board, of the select board, should be an officer of any of these other committees. I think in the case of the Affordable Housing Trust, and I guess you could argue the same thing with the OPEB Trust. When you serve as a trustee, you have a fiduciary obligation to that body. And I think that holding that position, when you're an officer of the select board as well, presents a potentially compromising position in terms of the independence of judgment that I think should govern voting. Not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that there's a violation of the conflict of interest rules or the conflict of interest law, because I don't think there is. I just think it presents the potential for clouding the independence of judgment. And I don't think it adds anything other than bad optics. I have felt at times that the select board under the current model with respect to the Affordable Housing Trust has almost functioned as a subsidiary of the trust, and that bothers me. That's an impression and feeling that I have. Hasn't always been the case, but I certainly felt it in the case of these two most recent properties that we, signed the LDAs for recently. I guess those are my broader comments. I suspect we're not going to be doing anything to change the current system, but I do have concerns, and those are what I have laid out. Thank you.
So, first of all, I want to stay away, although I have to admit in candor, I share some of the thoughts that Jeff suggested, that it's curious. I'm going to leave that to one side. I'm going to address this just as I would analyze it from afar. Number one, I think, and I've represented a lot of boards, and admittedly that was governed by the corporate law, but the fiduciary obligation of a board member is to the beneficiaries or the constituents of the body that is acting. And I can't tell you I can find that in Massachusetts law with respect to select boards, but what I can tell you is that certainly is the case with a corporate board. And from my perspective and the way I conduct myself here, and the way I would hope that we all do, because we may talk about it in different terms, but basically we're here to do the best job we can and to make the best decisions that we can, and to be to make the best living conditions that we can fashion for the town of Chatham, whom we represent. That's our fiduciary duty. And that's our fiduciary duty as select board members, and that's the fiduciary duty of the Affordable Housing Trust Board members, and frankly, I think every committee in this town. They may have a specific jurisdictional focus, but whatever the focus, their job is to make the best decisions they can and achieve the best outcomes they can for the benefit of the citizens of this town. And so that to me is number one. And I will confess to a certain impatience with the idea, the suggestion of a conflict. There is no conflict. You're just working in different territory with respect to different issues, different problems, whatever. But your job is always to get the best result for the citizens of this town, whatever the particular role is. Secondly, I don't know. I hadn't really thought about a charter amendment. It's interesting. I didn't do an exhaustive search because I didn't, really get a chance to start looking at this all that early myself. But I did make an effort to find where is it in either Massachusetts law or Chatham law that the rules are prescribed for electing the officers of a board. I couldn't find it. There isn't anything to my knowledge. Indeed, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute, but the only place where the charter says anything about who can or can't do anything with respect to being a board member or overlapping one board to another is the provision that says the members of the Finance Committee cannot be on any other board in town. They cannot be town officials in any other respect. To me, that's what we call in the law, forgive me, that's a negative pregnant. What does that mean? It means that people thought about, do you want to prevent somebody from doing something else by reason of their status as a board member? And the answer is, they didn't do that except for that one case. If you amend the charter, obviously that would control, although I'm going to come back to fiduciary duty. There's another principle, and that is that there should not be any restriction, legal restriction, on the ability of a board member to make the best judgment that they can. And so something that says you can only vote for these 4 people but not these 3 who otherwise are eligible, I would question whether that's legal under Massachusetts law. I don't know, it may well be, but I certainly think that that's a question that would have to be answered before you went forward with that. I'm going to stop there except to say one other thing. We have a lot of big issues that we have to address. I mean, the schools are getting, the population of the schools is going down. We have to finance the sewer development over a long period of time. We got grinder pumps to talk about. We got housing problems. We can't hire people. We have big problems. And I frankly admit to a certain impatience, whether I'm on this board or I'm just another citizen in Chatham, impatience that what are we talking about? We're talking about who can be elected chair of this, that, or the other board. I'll be honest with you. I know some people think it's a lot of power. It's not. It's a lot of work. It is. You really have to work. You have to talk to people. You have to listen to people. You have to try to fashion consensus. You got to be thinking about it all the time. It is a lot of work, and that's all it is. It is not something, and for God's sake, it is not, it doesn't make you into, I mean, I don't, if anybody knew, I doubt they do, but you don't get seated at this table or that table in a restaurant or anything else. It is a lot of work, and I personally think we ought to be paying attention to the big issues and not be worrying about, whether so-and-so. By the way, Shireen and I were nominated to the Affordable Housing Trust. Particularly in the incipient stages, it had to be one of us. I mean, it really should be one of us as that trust is getting its sea legs. And Shireen's a clerk. So, I mean, now you may say, well, I'm only talking about the chair. That would have been, if the rule were in place, basically you would have said, oh, it can't be Mike because he's the chair of the select board, although at that time I was not. It's got to be Shireen, who, I don't know if she was or but the point is, that's a hard decision for that committee to make without having to take that into consideration. And I just think we're hobbling ourselves to no salutary purpose, and I think we should be addressing the big issues. So with that, I will stop talking.
I can read a room. I'm not going to push this any further. I am in agreement that we need to focus on the big picture items. No disagreement there. Things move at a snail's pace in municipal government. We all have our issues with the process. No argument. But I do think this was important to have this conversation. We've had a lot of, I get an earful about process and perception. It needs to happen. It has happened. I can read a room. I'm not going to push this any further. Let's be frank about it. If someone really has a issue with this, there's a mechanism for a citizen to move forward with something. So
absolutely. And
I'm not going to call for a vote.
I will say, Corey, I will, I can't say that I saw this on the agenda as something I was looking forward to discussing. But at the same time, you did put it on the table, and we've had the discussion. I would hope that we can kind of move on, and if people want to make something of it, that's their privilege and their right. But I will say, having had the discussion, I appreciate that you did, and let's move on.
Fair enough. No, and again, I'll be crystal clear. I know people are going to make their own opinions about it. This is not a personal scenario about one individual over another. It's about the bigger picture policy from my perspective. But we've had the discussion. I appreciate the board's input. I've spoken my piece.
Okay, thank you. Next case. This is the Committees, Boards, and Commissioners Annual Review. So we have a couple of submissions. The options afforded us for this were to go through all this stuff tonight, or to look for a, well, there were three. Two was schedule a work session and review as we did the last time. And then the third was direct staff to bring 2 to 3 committees in front of us. I'm going to preempt here, not to the exclusion of anybody else, but I'm going to say, I thought that work session last year was a good thing. I would hope that we could do it that way again this year, but I will defer to the group. Shireen?
I'd like to do that again, or try to do that again. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 select board agenda items relating to committees that are pending, that we could take up at that meeting and talk about what direction we want to take them in, whether we want to, if they could be included in the workshop, that I think that would be helpful, and any other suggestions that anybody has. But I think it would be better if we had a working session and brought forth some of the different issues that the town, we've been looking to make changes on at that time.
Okay.
It's also 9 o'clock.
Corey?
The quick question, would the working session be on a regular meeting night? Which I'd be fine with. I don't think we need to do a deep multi-hour dive into this. I think there's some specific topics. I tell you, my 3 notes for me was just really an update on the EDC, update on Aunt Lydia's Cove, and then, we have the Cultural Council, we have a request that has come in about a reduction of membership that they've formally submitted. So that, that could be a standalone agenda item anyway, but it would kind of fit into the conversation. And then another question that they brought up was the recruitment and whether non-residents could or could not serve on the Cultural Council. That question hasn't been formally presented to us. It's been part of their minutes and dialogue, but that may need some further research about eligibility and other stuff. So there's some other pieces, but I don't think we need a multi-hour long, standalone meeting. I think we could probably tackle this.
The only question I have, the last time we did it, we actually had some people come in and talk to us at the time, when we did that. And that, I don't think that works terribly well with the regular.
So you're thinking
meetings.
off like a Thursday night for an hour and a half or
As much as
whatever.
I hate to be scheduling more meetings, yes, I think that's unfortunately what we're looking at, Dean.
Well, I'm not particularly enamored of having a separate working session on this. I wasn't particularly impressed with the last working session. I'm not sure how much it accomplished, be honest with you. This is on the agenda because it's in the charter. And it was Selectman Taylor who asked the board to honor its responsibility under the charter to review committees once a year. And we put that in place. And for the last 8 or 9 years, we did that in the context of a regular board meeting. Last year was the first time we had to have a special 2-hour session, which had some controversy, if you remember. We accomplished perhaps some finite things with respect to some particular committees. No committees were eliminated, and maybe others feel we have plenty of committees and we should have more committees. I'm not in that camp. So I think there were a finite number of issues, as Corey has articulated, and maybe Shireen has some, that we should take those up at a regular board meeting, and if committee chairs want to participate, fine. But we now have the process in place. We've renewed having committee chairs come and present to us at live board meetings. We will have done every single committee by the year's end. And to have a working session for a couple of hours, I don't favor it. I'm probably going to be outvoted on it, but it is what it is. I thought we beat the topic to death last year. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
So regulatory, we're going to do nothing with that. There's 7 regulatory charged by statute that we're going to do we're not gonna change it, we're not gonna nuke them, we're not, okay? Non-regulatory charged by statute, what are we gonna do with those? We're not gonna disband any of them, we're gonna reorganize, do we have ideas about each one that we wanna change, or, I mean, so then it leads me to think about, well, what are the other advisory committees that we don't that add value or don't add value, and is there a depth of issue with respect to any of them that we need a deeper dive on? Whether we do it in public or private, public or an off-site meeting matters not to me. Thursdays are best for me, but I'm not, as Dean noted, I'm not looking to have another meeting. We do spend a ton of time, but there are issues, I think, with the other advisory, because the other ones are off the table as far as I'm concerned, unless other people have issues with them. So I would work down the other advisory committees here and see whether or not there's anything we want to tweak. And be honest with you, it's really pretty much nothing that I would mess with. I don't know. But if you have issues, then let's go.
I'm just gonna, if you don't mind.
No, please.
I'm just gonna bring up some of the things that, have been just laying here for the last year, since probably our last meeting. Aunt Lydia's Cove Committee, review mission and charge. Corey, you brought that up. Determine oversight of the trap dock operation, and with Aunt Lydia's Cove Committee or another committee. I'd like to include 90 Bridge Street in that, and probably the landings. Establish a town landing parking committee. Do we want to do that? Review open space committee's charge and discussion of directives. Well, yes, I mean, that's an important thing. Task economic development committee with specific works. Those are important things that we have listed for a year anyway, that we need to address. So whether it's in a workshop, if that's something that everybody doesn't want to do, but it's going to take some time to talk about it. And if we could dedicate the time to talk about it, I'd feel more comfortable than, because otherwise we'd be rushing through it.
Yeah, and I'm going to endorse that comment. And there's a further thought in my mind, in addition to what Shireen just said, and that is this. We know there are committees that need something. And she's identified a couple of those items, but we know that, and they're not. That isn't going to get fixed unless we attend to it, look at it, figure it out a little bit, and try to maybe bring the people in front of us, but make an effort and do it. Again, in my opinion, in a dedicated time frame where you have an opportunity to prepare for it properly, and maybe it won't be entirely successful, but I do think on a regular basis you need to be doing that, if only to tell the town and the committees that we are, from time to time, focused on what they're doing. Yeah.
Can I just say one thing about telling things to committees? It's about time that we got committee members to comply with the conflict of interest law by filing their ethics statements. We used to get a summary from the town clerk, but now because the state took that over,
She still has that
but
Kathy has
I
that
suspect there are many committee members.
Quarterly, I'm given a report from the town clerk's office. We've worked it out that when they pull it for their records, they're sharing that information with me. I'm going through and looking to see. We did have an increase. I don't have the exact percentage in front of me at the moment, but we did see an increase in the amount of ethics trainings completed since
That's
we
good
had
to
the
hear.
discussion last year. There's still that issue of when the state requires you to list what organization you're taking the ethics training for like example for myself, I'm under Mashpee, I don't show on Chatham's list. So when the town clerk is pulling the list, they're pulling a list of Chatham, people who identify Chatham as the organization they're taking the ethics training for. But there is a way to provide, like I've given my certification that I did for myself to town clerk, so it's on file, and other committee members who've had that have given me, today I received a printout of that certification, so people are hearing that and coming into
I'm happy to
compliance.
hear there's increased compliance, but I think it's something we have to continue to hammer away at.
Well, does anybody have any interest in the third alternative about asking staff to bring 2 or 3 committees from time to time, so we take that off the table? So it's really a question of whether we try, I mean, I think focused, yes, and then the question is whether we do it as part of our meetings or we do it as a separate meeting. Is that fair?
It's definitely fair. What's most efficient? What can we get the most done? Off-site, outside our regular, and who sets the agenda? Is the agenda what Shireen just articulated, or are there additions, deletions, or, These are issue-focused, involve committees and commissions, but they're issue-focused.
No, I mean, to just initial point about, regulatory committees are off the table. We've kind of limited our menu of committees that we're going to discuss. I mean, like I said, from my perspective, everything that's kind of been queued up here is it's a good discussion, but it's not going to be hours long, and it's going to be simple things, just status for the EDC. That's it's a conversation that we've had going for quite some time. For me, the Aunt Lady's Cove, we have Jason Holmes, our harbor master, who's leading these meetings because we haven't reorganized. Like, I want to get to the point where we fill the seats, hopefully, or at least get them reorganized, have a chair, and let them figure out, are they meeting as needed, quarterly, monthly, whatever, and what are they working on? And then again, the cultural council thing, getting some clarification on resident, non-resident, that may need town action item. We don't know. I don't know. And as far as the reduction in membership, that could be a standalone item aside from all this. So that that doesn't even have to be part of the process right now. We've upped the membership down, reduced the membership, reduced it again, brought it up again. So that can be done on its own merits. So.
I established a town landing parking committee. Whether it's parking or not, but it's certainly part of it. But paying attention to the town landings, if that's part of the discussion, I'm very interested.
Yeah, neighbor
I'd be
butters
interested in
issues.
neighbor,
Yeah, these are
absolutely.
all
These are all intertwined.
intertwined.
I get it.
I also, I think, messaging back to the boards that, I think a lot of, I know we're getting into some discussion here and I don't want to, but, getting into discussing, how do we articulate to some of these boards that they don't necessarily have to be meeting every month? If you don't have stuff on the table, don't try to make stuff up, just to move it forward. So just have clear cut, your mission is your mission and work the mission statement.
So do we have a consensus that we ask Jill to find a time that we can, and we'll try to hold it to 90 minutes?
It's going to happen, so I will participate. I should think that if individual board members have issues,
For sure.
they
Let's
submit
get them on
them-
the agenda.
submit them to Kathy and
Yep,
Jill.
yep.
Thursdays.
Okay. Okay. All right. Anything else? I think we're done, aren't we?
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All those, any further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Shell says aye, and Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
Thank you. Yep. Long meeting, good meeting.